OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
All right, it's 7:30. It is Tuesday morning. It's International Week. I don't know how everybody's feeling about the Republic of Ireland at the moment. Nathan characterised it as like, first part of the week, everybody doesn't really care because there's a hangover from the Premier League games. And then as the matches happen, they're literally the most important things in the world. And everybody starts to tear the team apart. And then the team play well. They're like, we had your back all along. Is that how your week is going this week? Is that how everybody expects it to go?
Yeah. Do you know, at least there's an optimism and an excitement for Irish games at the minute. Like, there was so many years there, barren years, where we almost dreaded international breaks, like they were the worst thing ever invented.
There were so many windows, like the last one, where things went very pear-shaped at the start and then finished well. It was like, oh no.
But at least now we have arguments over the team. For years it was, there are our 11 best players and we have very few other players. So it was, I like the fact that we have arguments now.
Well, there was always a plus one. There was always an Andy Reid or a Wes who, you know, and the young players, the Quins of the world who are like in their 30s, that Dunphy had decided he's my guy. He's my new Liam Brady. He's my new Dave O'Leary. And so he's my guy.
Yeah. And at least there's interesting strands around the Irish players. Like the Obafemi stuff at club level is very interesting. The Nathan Collins getting sent off. And I really, really enjoyed the behind the scenes FAI clip of James Mclean going at him. And like they're all hugging. I always watch these behind the scenes clips for some reason.
I didn't see this, so good.
It's like a behind the curtain look at the team meeting up in the camp for the first time this week. And Mclean walks up to Nathan Collins and he's like, would you ever just walk off the pitch? And he's like, the way Nathan Collins essentially was protesting his innocence. It seemed to take Nathan Collins 10 minutes to get off the pitch because he was either distraught or...
I got the ball.
Yeah, well, that was his original instinct to claim that he got the ball, which was, by all accounts, a ridiculous thing to say because it was a terrible tackle. But I think he was just disappointed in himself that he had mistimed the tackle so badly, maybe. But Mclean was really ribbing him about taking so long to get off the pitch and accept your red card.
The great kung fu kicks of Irish football history. There's obviously Jason McAteer, and now there's Nathan Collins. Are there any others?
I don't think so. That's the great two. Keane probably got a few into Mark Overmars that day as well.
Well, that was just a good tackle.
Yeah, just a good tackle, of course.
Keane obviously kicked. Was it a Russian player up the hole was it in McCarthy's the first game that he played for McCarthy? He gets sent off. I think we're being beaten 3-0, and he just turns around to somebody and boots him up the hole, and just walks off.
You can understand
before the red card gets shown.
Yeah,
at least in my head, that's it. Could have been a different red card.
You can understand it. Kevin Kilbane got a call out from Stephen Kenny.
Did he?
No, he was actually discussing. I had the quote here. So he was asked about Andy Lyons, I think, and how close he would be to a call up. And he then pinpointed Neil Farrugia as the player with Shamrock Rovers that he's most got his eye on. But when he was describing Farrugia, he said he has the characteristics because he has that sort of Kevin Kilbane athleticism, that he can run 100 yards with that long stride and height, but he also has a high level of skill. He could do anything. So, yeah, interested to hear Killer get the call out from Stephen Kenny all these years later.
Yeah, I think maybe because for whatever reason we underappreciate the career that Kevin had.
Yeah, it was the first Irish footballer I think that I got really starstruck meeting. Myself and my dad I used to force Dad to stay behind. We used to get the dart to our cousins in Leicester after the match, but we would get the last dart because I'd be dying to get autographs off the entire team. And I still remember walking up to Kevin Kilbane and calling him Kilbane and screaming his name until he signed my thing. And Dad said to me afterwards, you have to call them by their first name. His name is Kevin.
Especially when you're 22 and 6'4" like you are.
Exactly. It was kind of embarrassing for me at that point. But no, I was obviously a kid. But that was the first time I realised footballers had first names. I just thought the Kilbane.
Well, I mean, that's what you see on TV, so why would you?
Exactly. So I then realised that they were human beings like the rest of us and fallible.
Nathan's going to pick his team for us a little bit later on. We had Johnny Ward pick his team yesterday, and then unfortunately the news came through that Andrew Omobamidele is injured and won't be playing. There's two things. What would your team be, and what will Stephen Kenny's team be? These are different things, right?
Yeah.
I think that if I was in charge of the team, I'd be rolling the dice and picking the young lads. But obviously, Omobamidele's out, so...
You see, he's not going to pick all of the young lads. So you're looking at... Well, Collins and Egan are guaranteed in the team. So then you're looking at Duffy, Coleman and O'Shea for the other spot. I know,
who's playing right wing back?
Well, he's favoured Matt Doherty when he's been available.
Who's playing left wing back?
Mclean.
Is he? That's it, nailed down now. It's his spot.
I'd be putting Mclean in. that's my team. But yeah, Nathan might think otherwise. But
I think he has him in his team as well.
I'd almost have like Darragh O'Shea in with Collins and Egan, but I don't think that's what Stephen Kenny's going to do. It seemed in training yesterday that he pulled Seamus Coleman aside for 10 or 15 minutes, was chatting to him. I know the journalists that were there kind of reported that the training was split into 2 sessions. The first session was the one the journalists were allowed to see, and that seemed to be the session with players who haven't been playing for club quite regularly. Even Nathan Collins as well, because he was sent off, was included in that group. And then the group that followed was maybe players who are getting a bit more game time at club level. So it's interesting. I love those little strands of training where you're trying to decipher what does Stephen Kenny mean by all this. And obviously you can read whatever you want into him chatting to Seamus Coleman for a while, but that's probably just because Coleman is one of the more experienced members of the team. But I think he's going to pick Coleman. I'd have Darragh O'Shea, but I think he's going to go with Coleman maybe.
Everybody seems to assume now that Coleman won't play as a wing back for us again, that he's one of the 3, and maybe that's the case. I don't know. I think there's room for Coleman on the right and Doherty on the left. I thought when they did that, the team played really well.
It worked for a while, yeah.
So there's no reason why we wouldn't be able to try that again. And that's why I was thinking that when we had the 3 younger centre backs. But you can still have Collins and Darragh O'Shea and John Egan, I think, which would be excellent, and then still have Coleman on the right wing back position. And it depends, like what is the threat coming down the left wing from Scotland? We're going to get the view from Scotland over the next couple of days to see. It could still be very good.
But it was funny listening to Brian Kerr on Sunday with Joe after the Everton game, and like he was asked about do you pick players on form or do you pick players just because they've given a lot for at international level and have done good things in recent games, but there's such a big gap between international windows. But Kerr was of the opinion that club form is only important to a certain degree. You need players who can play with this Irish team in a certain way in this Irish system. Like Shane Duffy has only played, like he joined Fulham looking for game time, and I think he's played 2 minutes out of the first 7 games for Fulham this season, which isn't great. So he'll obviously be disappointed with that, but there's no reason why Duffy can't be included in the Irish team. Like Scott Hogan is someone who's underachieved in the green jersey by all accounts, and his performances haven't been great. But Kenny was asked about him this week, and he said he's different now. He's more consistent with his performances. He's probably physically in a better place than he was in previous international windows, and he's banging in goals for Birmingham. So I'm not saying Scott Hogan's going to start by any stretch, but
he didn't put him in the squad for no reason.
Yeah. Well, on form, Ogbenya starts. You would imagine, obviously Rotherham is a different level to international football, but he seems every time he plays for Ireland to be in a good place. Obafemi's not playing football, but then do you put him in because of what we know he's capable of?
It's funny because his club manager said hopefully he'll go away with Ireland and come back the player we know he can be.
Yeah.
So I mean, maybe you're thinking longer term here and having Michael Obafemi in the team and scoring goals and using the international window as a springboard to get back in the team. So there's a lot to take in.
But even the Pat Nevin last night talking about the Scottish system and team, and they would have been disappointed the last time they played in Dublin, of course, and they were kind of coming off the back of that tough Ukraine game as well, so they were in a tough place. We know Scotland play Ukraine tomorrow night, so maybe they'll be leggy again on Saturday, who knows. But Scotland are probably weakest and have the least selection headaches in centre half and centre forward, where ironically Ireland seem to have the most options at the minute. So yeah, it's funny, the Scottish, and even Andy Robertson, you think when you immediately hear that news Andy Robertson's going to be missing at left back for Scotland, you're like, oh, this is great, but there's so many options at left back.
They do.
It doesn't matter.
Tierney's going to be it. So maybe you do need a lot more pace and high energy and high intensity in that, or maybe, I don't know, does he pick Chidozie Ogbene as our right wing back, considering that's where he's played a lot of club football, and go, okay, this is where you're going to be for Ireland from now on, because we are going to use you as an attacking threat to pin the opposition back.
Possibly try something different. But
give us your teams in the YouTube comments. You can do that. Here's what's coming up between now and 10 o'clock this morning. We have Gareth A. Davies going to join us to talk to us about the eventual Fury Joshua fight, which we think is going to happen in December. There's also Ben Eubank. Is this round 4 in the family fights? The Ireland 15 with Nathan at 8:15. We'll talk about that. Sports Pages, John Duggan at 8:40. Some highlights from the weekend as well. Conor O'Brien is going to talk to us about his injury, which has forced his retirement, and we'll play some Graham Hunter from last night talking about the horrific racism that Vinicius Junior suffered at the weekend at the hands of Atletico Madrid fans. The Madrid mayor has come out in the last 24 hours and said that they want to deal with this. So hopefully there is a movement growing in Spain to finally begin to tackle the racist abuse that goes on in all sporting stadiums in Spain. We've seen it in Formula 1, we're seeing it in football, and there hasn't been any significant effort to tackle it in the past, so fingers crossed that that's about to change. It's 7:40 this morning. Morning, lads. Didn't Roy tread on Southgate once, says Chris Cal? He did, yeah. It was a stamp.
Yeah,
Southgate had the temerity to tackle him. Like, who? What are you doing?
Yeah, I kind of like that. I kind of like when players stood up to Roy Keane a little bit and weren't afraid to go for it, because it was a rare thing to see them actually respond in any fashion. But yeah, Southgate was one of those. They have a good relationship now, obviously.
They seem to have, yeah. He was a little guy, Keane, really, compared to some of the other lads.
Napoleon syndrome, is that what you were saying?
Well, I don't know. I mean, it was funny because Jonathan Walters was always like, why were people scared of him? Why were people scared of him? What was he going to do? Beat you up?
I actually think it is the Cork accent. I'm not going to lie. Colm in the box will enjoy this one, but there is something about the Cork accent that makes it the most intimidating accent of the 32 counties in Ireland, I think. You're probably looking at me thinking the border accents are relatively intimidating as well.
Right. Not the hard Belfast accent.
Well, yeah.
I mean, with some,
Yeah, the hard Belfast accent. Sorry, that's.
I say this with.
You obviously got Antrim blood, so you're allowed to say this.
But certainly people quail when they hear the.
Yeah, the Antrim one is certainly intimidating. But there's something about the high pitched Cork. It's when Keane gets really annoyed in it.
Well, ranting shaved-headed man is different from like normal. Normally, it's like a soft lilt.
Yeah, it's true. It depends what he's saying. What
I was speaking to an inter-county hurler recently who was like, we think Cork have gone soft, and for the last decades, the Cork hurlers have basically been soft. I'd say basically since The Rock retired, that's that perception, and they all speak like that. So
true. Yeah. Cork people listening, you can respond on the YouTube to Ger's assertion there. I don't know. I just think maybe it's just simply Roy Keane. But I think when Damien Delaney gets a little bit annoyed at, when he's on the punditry and something's grinding his gears, he all of a sudden kicks into a fairly intimidating version of himself. David Myler's probably the same. There's something good about it. I enjoy it. I love the Cork accent. By the way, I love the Cork accent. For anyone who thinks I'm giving out, you're welcome, Colin. But
you've opened a can of worms there.
I have.
Right. The other thing we need to talk about is county managers need to be paid professionals and no longer via the black market. This is your county man, Dick Clerkin, your club man now, I think.
Well, yeah, like he's a Curran man from Holmes. He's an uncle of Jack McCarran's. Jack McCarran is still playing club football for Curran, but he's living in Monaghan Town now, Dick, and his kids are involved in Monaghan Harps, my own club. But interesting views. Like, he's pointing out the fact that obviously Donegal, Roscommon and Monaghan, 3 of the Division 1 teams, still looking for a manager. He says the issue in Monaghan seems to be lack of interest in qualified candidates, which I find fascinating at the minute, because all 3 of those jobs are pretty good jobs. They're Division 1 teams next year in the league, and you could argue that all 3 of them will be aiming to win their own provinces.
Monaghan might be on the way down. Donegal might be on the way down.
Yeah, I've been very, very optimistic about Monaghan heading into usual seasons. I'm not optimistic at all.
And Roscommon might have peaked. So if you're a manager who's thinking, I'm going to use this as a stepping stone to something else,
yeah,
how do you actually overachieve versus what? Now, I think maybe Donegal, listening to Boner last week, was like, Jesus, they were pretty close, like the penalty and the red card versus Tyrone. Tyrone then get their shit together and go on and win the All-Ireland. Now,
yeah,
I'm not saying Donegal were going to go and win the All-Ireland, but they would have caused trouble for anybody if they'd gone that same direction. They would have been completely underrated.
Well, if you're a manager looking at Monaghan and Donegal, you're thinking, okay, from an All-Ireland series perspective, you've got Kerry, who are ultra dominant. You've got the Dubs now with Mannion and Jack back in, who are that's just going to take them to the next level. And then in Ulster, you've got the rising forces of Derry and Armagh and other counties who you would think are like that. That's not even talking about Tyrone and Donegal, but it's a snake pit. They're tough provinces to get out of. Maybe look, Dick's point is that the issues are increasing demands on inter-county managers. It's not easy, that maybe managers need to be paid. He
says he put the figure on. He says he could get 20 grand easily if he was to take up some of the offers that he's had. Now, obviously, that's all off the books,
Yeah. And I don't know if they're inter-county offers or if they're
The mix of club and I think
club and county. Like,
he's a man in demand.
He's a man in demand, and he's gonna maybe he's putting himself out there. Maybe he wants the job because even he says there he talks.
Well, he says he couldn't do it at the moment because he's because of his kids and his underage coaching with the club and his business.
Well, that's fair, but I mean, I don't know. I honestly don't know how inter-county managers ever have the time, as well as a full-time job. It's one of those things that you need to give your entire life and being to the position. Because even now in the off season, it's September. The season doesn't start till January, February, but they're all having to go to club matches and watch club games constantly. Like you saw Desi Farrell watching the club games in Dublin at the weekend. Every single inter-county manager is out there doing it. So yeah, look, do county managers need to be paid? They're already paid to a certain degree, and there's very generous diesel expenses, you'd imagine. As
I know,
most
but loads of them aren't getting paid. And you do have to have reached a certain stage in your life where you're okay to take on that. And listening to various people talking about the demands, like Derek McGrath was talking about, I need to spend some time with my family. It's like, actually you do.
Yeah.
You're not spending any time with your family at all if you have a job and you're an inter-county manager, because you're getting home, if you're lucky, you're having some food, you're saying hello to people, and then you're gone again for the evening.
And you're planning sessions, and it is a full-time job in its own sense without the pay. But I don't know. I don't know if the answer is paying inter-county managers. I know a lot of players seem to be against the idea of any sense of semi-professionalism or professionalism coming into the game. Most of them, but it has to be done right. My dad is a big proponent of transfer windows in the GAA, and counties being allowed maybe 2 or 3 players not from within the county, which would be interesting, but I don't know if that's the way forward either.
Well, they did it in hurling, obviously, but only for the lower tier teams.
Yeah.
Is he so? I don't think Monaghan would benefit from this.
No, this is the thing.
There might be a situation where some of your best players move to Dublin for work and then suddenly start playing.
Yeah.
Kicking 15 points.
Conor McManus wins his All-Ireland with Dublin.
Or 6.
Yeah.
And you're all like, I'm delighted for you. Well done.
Yeah. Right. Congratulations. Yes, it's and GAA is so parochial as well that people, you enjoy playing for your club, and there's a different element to it. Like, I was at club games the weekend as well at home, and you'd almost forget that there is constant GAA happening at the minute. Now, obviously, TG Carr are showing the games last weekend at the Dublin Championship and elsewhere, which is great. But we need to probably be hammering home the fact that there are a serious level of club championship games. And if you'd looked at club championship 10, 15, 20 years ago and someone had told you the level at which it would be at now, it's just ridiculous. Some of these players aren't far off inter-county levels of commitment. So it's I don't know where it's going to end. Where's the plateau here? Like,
I don't know. And I think the plateau is that it might end up ironically becoming a game for the very rich and the very young. You've made your fortune in your early 20s, and so therefore you can dedicate your life to playing Gaelic football or hurling
as a hobby.
That's the old patrician conservative, the way sport was for amateurs, because we're so rich we don't need to work. Why would we get paid for this? That's how the Brits wanted sport to be in the 1800s. Then the rest of us got an opportunity to play and was like, hang on a second, should we not get paid for this?
Yeah. Proper money. Like Jimmy Garoppolo money, Ger.
You want to talk about Jimmy G?
I just these numbers, the numbers were kind of I was Googling last night what are the crown jewels worth. Because the funeral was obviously flickering across the TV yesterday, and I was like, what are those 3, the orbs and the orb and the spectre and the crown itself? Someone has estimated that the crown that actual crown itself with all those stolen diamonds is about £35 million at a very conservative estimate, but that the crown jewels themselves in their entirety are about 3.5 billion. So worth a few quid. But Jimmy Garoppolo, so we all know that Trey Lance is kind of taking the mantle of your own beloved 49ers.
So the 49ers traded 3 picks to be able to select Trey Lance in the draft 2 seasons ago. Didn't play at all last year. Jimmy G held him off and took the team to within 5 minutes of appearing in the Super Bowl, which would have been his second Super Bowl appearance. And then they were like, okay, we're handing the keys over to you, and Jimmy G's available for trade. But he did his shoulder and got surgery, and so nobody wanted him because he's got a gimpy shoulder.
Yeah.
And then Trey Lance does his ankle on the 3rd play of the second match, and he's gone for the season.
Literally in the first quarter. And as it turns out, the fact that Trey Lance did his ankle in the first quarter worked out financially very, very well for Jimmy G, because His this revised deal for the base salary, as I was saying to you earlier, 26.62 million. It was down to 6.5 million. But this contract laden with incentives. You've got, so because of the win over the Seahawks on Sunday, he has to play 25% of the offensive snaps in a game to earn $250,000. And because of course Lance went off in the first quarter, he played 79%.
He's going to play every game, every minute now.
This is the thing, and he gets for winning the game another $100,000. So that's $350,000 for the win on Sunday. That's aside from the $29,000 for every game he's on the active roster. That maxes out at $500,000. He maxes out this new contract at $15.45 million. So even with all these incentives, he can only, per Jimmy, max out at $15.45 million. But I mean, the money is just astounding. No, like obviously the figures of other players in the NFL probably dwarf this in some regard as well. I just thought that from an incentives point of view, to be involved in a quarter of the offensive snaps and get $250,000 for yourself on a night's work, and then to win the game and get $100,000, it's all right.
It's not bad. The only thing is that, like, so the $6 million a year, right? $6 million a year. It sounds great, but it's $115,000 a week. So every footballer who earns $150,000 a week is getting paid more than Jimmy G.
Well, when you put it like that,
Luca Dean.
Yeah, it's a fair point. Tax obviously comes into this as well, but I mean, when
California taxes aren't great. Luca Dean, $9.3 million a year,
right,
guaranteed.
Yeah, you see, you forget that because the footballers' wages are in per week, you forget to add them up and ask yourself, what is that in a year again?
Yeah. So, and the other thing is, of course, the NFL teams have like active rosters of 53 men, and then the practice squad have an extra 13, 14 after that. So, but the Jimmy G is going to be passing the ball to Deebo Samuel, who'll be earning on average $21 million a year for the next 4 years.
And like the bonuses those lads get as well, I'm sure per catch they're earning something.
Well, the wide receivers are all trying to get guaranteed money now. The other thing is, this isn't guaranteed. The 49ers can basically cut Jimmy G and they'll have to pay him the $6 million. That's it. If they, at any point, if they decide they don't like the cut of his jib. But the wide receivers are smart enough not to get paid by the catch, because you drop a ball, someone smashes into you.
It's a lot of pressure on the catch.
You rupture your spleen and you can't play. It's like, no, my money is fully guaranteed, or at least the portions of it that's guaranteed is between 50 and 60 million, and then there's another 20 in incentives that you just have to show up to.
Jesus. And also the most handsome man in sport, Jimmy G, potentially. Olivier Giroud will have probably be dialing into the show now, but Jimmy G is certainly the most handsome man in sport.
You're accidentally listening into a power ranking of the most handsome men.
We should actually do that. We should do that. Yeah, for sure.
Suggestions, please, in the YouTube channel. Damien says, sorry guys, but you're normalising obscene and immoral wages.
I think by highlighting it, I'm pointing out how obscene and ridiculous they are, comparing them to the crown jewels.
But are they obscene? Are they obscene and ridiculous? Are they like you know?
Well, yeah, they are. But
why? So one of the things you want to talk about was like, what would you queue to go and see?
Yeah,
right.
Well, the Queen's 24-hour queues at one point had me thinking, what sporting event would I queue that length for? And probably, well, this.
So let's say you're a 49ers fan and the 49ers are going to they're 6-0 or 8-0 and like tickets are gold dust.
Yeah.
The person making all the money from the tickets being gold dust is the owner.
Yeah.
Not the players. Even though the players are creating the value. Like,
true.
The reason that footballers get paid is because the reason that any sports person gets paid, the amount of money that they get paid, is because we're dying to see them do it, and they're doing things we can't do. Like,
fair. Yeah.
Does everybody think it was obscene, the amount of money that an artist makes when he plays a concert for 5 nights that like the whole country loses its mind over? Is it obscene?
He's giving us entertainment value.
Like, and people were willing to pay 50 quid for that.
But I think you can use the word obscene while also accepting that.
Brooks made Jimmy Garoppolo money.
Yeah, it's fine.
But it's like
I think it's obscene, but I can see why they're paid. I can see why, Cristiano Ronaldo has made a certain wage his entire career. Lionel Messi has made a certain wage his entire career. I can understand that.
Luca Dean, you've got a problem with.
Luca Dean, I might have an issue with. But then again, Luca Dean, if you threw him into a Sunday League match or any level beneath the Premier League, you'd be like, what a player this guy is. Do you know, he's still an extremely talented and skillful individual at what he does. Anyone in the Premier League is. But yeah, it's still an obscene amount of money. And to hear Shane Lowry coming out after his recent win in Wentworth was quite heartwarming, saying that the money was just ridiculous that he's earned from that win. But then again, you wouldn't want to take it off him because he's earned it. you know, it's not easy. It's not live golf money, but it's still good money.
Give us your views on this. 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Here's Pat and Evan talking with Joe last night about giving us the Scottish perspective ahead of this weekend's game in Glasgow. We're back after this.
What Scotland are we headed towards on Saturday?
Well, that's the one we're all desperate to see. I was at the Aviva that day, fresh off my fantastic weekend in Carlow, which you can't forget.
Oh, yeah.
And Stevie Clarke's got an amazing amount out of that group of players. Yeah, it's not exactly a golden generation, but it's a very strong generation that Scotland have got just now. So the shock of the poor performance against Ireland was really, really quite stunning. Now, he's still got a decent amount of capital, you know, in the bank, Stevie Clarke, but there was a few mumblings around saying, well, is that it? Is that as far as we've gone? Is that golden run? Where Scotland got a lot of luck as well, you know, especially to get through to the Euros. So there is a concern. And the game against Ireland, I don't think it has been disrespectful because of the reasons you've just given me there, because of the players that are playing at the top level in England. The expectation wasn't for Scotland to be the second best team by a distance in that game, and by a good distance in that game. So this is a huge one for Scotland and Stevie Clarke. They need to get the best out of it. Robertson's not available, I don't think.
No.
But seeing as we're coming down with fullbacks, we're not over worried about that at the moment, because Hickey can play there, but obviously Tierney's fine for there as well. So we're actually okay with that. The problem Scotland's got is we can look a bit soft up front. Jay Adams is a very good technical player, but after that you start really struggling a little bit to get, you know, Christie's good player. There are good players there, but an out-and-out striker, all you need to do is look at the top level of Scottish football and say, right, okay, where's the strikers? And they're not Scottish.
Yeah.
They're generally not Scottish. And then you look down south at all our players that are playing down south, they're in centre forwards, and if there's two areas that Scotland have struggled at, it's at centre back and centre forward, to really get something special together. And I don't think that's any different now, and I think Ireland will be acutely aware of that. So it's going to be a tough one for Scotland. Then again, good news, we're playing Ukraine again just before. We're playing Ukraine on Wednesday night, so setting the stars to see how that one will go. I'm looking forward to it, but I expect a lot better from Stevie Clarke's side this time.
It's Pat and Evan there, and Michael says, I met Pat at Boris House, sound fella, no doubt. One of the Carlo and Evans, of course, a great sporting family across different codes. Right, 0879 180 180 is the number if you want to get in touch with us by text or WhatsApp this morning. I'm delighted to say Gareth A. Davies is back with us. Gareth, good morning to you. How are you?
Very good morning, Ger and Shane. Good morning.
We are excited, we think, about the prospect of one of the most eagerly anticipated fights of the last decade finally being made, and we're just very close to it. There's like a finger hovering over the button, but the button, as far as we know, has yet to be pressed. What's your understanding of where we are with regards to the fight actually finally being made?
Well, between Fury and Joshua, obviously. Well, we hope the fight goes ahead, and we hope that it will be signed this week. I mean, woulda, shoulda, coulda. I won't believe it. I remain sceptical about it until they genuinely sign the contract, and you know, we have a press conference saying that these guys are going to step in a ring together. We're told it's December the 3rd, Principality Stadium in Cardiff. As you say, it would be a massive occasion if it does happen. I do tend to think that it's maybe a bluff that Fury made, you know, a couple of weeks ago that's kind of gone right. And a series of fortuitous events will get them in the ring together. It makes sense in a lot of ways for Anthony Joshua to take it. It makes sense for him not to take it as well. But I really hope it's going to get over the line. It's a massive fight over here, one that looked a long, long way away when Joshua lost twice to Alexander Usyk. But the way that certainly the algorithm in heavyweight boxing is very weird. So it wouldn't surprise me if it falls apart, but it wouldn't surprise me if it happens, if I can put it like that.
What do you think is... let's start with the Joshua side of it. What's his motivation for getting in against Fury at this stage of his career?
Well, look, he's lost 3 of his last 5. he's desperately frustrated with himself that he lost those 2 fights to Alexander Usyk. I was out there in Saudi Arabia. It was a much improved performance. Sorry, I set my alarm at the wrong time.
That's all right.
But he was desperately disappointed with himself for the loss to Usyk in Saudi Arabia. It was a terrible performance a year earlier at Tottenham Hotspur Stadium here in London. And I think he knows that Tyson Fury could have fought Alexander Usyk and kind of walked away, and no one would have had a doubt that, or there wouldn't have been enough doubt there that people would debated, oh, Joshua might have beaten Fury, and he could have walked away potentially and not boxed again Fury, and probably would have ended up as the dominant figure in the era. So the fact he gets the opportunity to fight Fury is one thing, and he probably believes he can beat Fury. So there's a parallel route there where it's kind of, there's a lot of jeopardy there for him. There's a lot of risk. He's really rolling the dice, because conventional boxing wisdom would say, don't fight your toughest fight when you're on the back of 2 losses. But if he takes it now, obviously he's earning really well from it, and he wins, then, as Eddie Hearn told me last week, he's God again. He's God. I don't think he beats Fury now. But again, I think those 2 things, it's a chance to fight Fury that he might never have, and it's a chance to get back and win the WBC belt, of course, the belt he's never won, but a chance to beat Fury. So I think that's the drive for him, that's the motivation.
In terms of the actual matchup itself, right, you said conventional wisdom is about not fighting after the 2 successive defeats. I think conventional wisdom would suggest that people think that whatever skills Usyk has, Fury also has, except he's also just a much bigger man. So there's a possibility he gets dominated in this fight, and while if he wins, he's God. If he loses badly, could that be the end?
We're certainly close to the end game. There's no doubt about it. It's close to an end game, but he's still a massive commodity in the boxing world. He's still a huge draw. People will, I think Frank Warren and Eddie Hearn, the rival promoters on both sides of the negotiation, believe it'll do 2 million pay-per-view buys. I don't disagree with them at all. I mean, and if it ignites even more, and they really build it. They haven't got long, remember. But I think it will be a big fight. And like you say, if Joshua is embarrassed in the fight, and he's popped by Fury's jab, and Fury dominates him and beats him up and stops him in 6, 7, 8 rounds, then it could be a tough road for Joshua. But I still think there's a Deontay Wilder fight there and a Dillian White fight. I think there's still an appetite there. He will have earned hundreds of millions anyway by the time he's fought Fury. I think people will be interested in a Dillian White fight and a Deontay Wilder fight with Joshua is a shootout, and Dillian White and Joshua has all the kind of fire. There's a fire under it because they don't like each other. So there's still a couple of fights there, but the redemption road is December the 3rd. It's getting over the bridge to Cardiff. That's the redemption night. For me, he did perform a hell of a lot better in Saudi Arabia against Usyk, and in the 9th round, he was brilliant and he went for it. And I had him 5-4 at that point. I know a lot of people don't agree with that scoring, but Joshua put on a much better performance. His problem is his boxing IQ, and he's admitted that. He wishes he'd had a longer amateur pedigree. And as you rightly say, Fury's a tricky opponent. 6'9", elusive, in and out, almost in a trance when he fights. But in some ways, might be less elusive. Just to give a little bit of open door for Joshua, he may be a slightly easier opponent than a tricky southpaw because he's orthodox for Joshua. So it's a good look. We're all excited by it, aren't we? We want the fight to be signed. It'd be amazing to see. A year and a half ago, it was probably the richest fight we've ever seen in British boxing. It's still close to being that now, probably worth £80 million. So please, let's get it over the line.
Gareth, I've heard the argument made regarding Joshua that, you know, he has so many business interests outside the ring as well that he has to focus on and give time to. And look, without diving into the realm of excuses territory for Joshua here, and fair play to him for having all those business interests, but if you're fighting someone like Tyson Fury, it's really tough from a boxing perspective to have your thoughts anywhere else outside the ring. Is that something that he's going to have to maybe put to one side if he has a fight like this coming up?
Yeah, I mean, look how we are with him, though. You know, he's got too many interests. He's so easy to criticise, and yet he's done so little wrong other than lose 3 fights, and he avenged one of them against Andy Ruiz. I find myself thinking about that with him, that, you know, he had 36 odd amateur fights before he won the Olympic super heavyweight gold a decade ago, pretty much a decade ago to the day. It was August, wasn't it? But he's earned hundreds of millions of pounds. He's done nothing wrong in 10 years. He's been an emblematic of a great period in boxing. He's definitely brought boxing to the fore in this country, and, you know, and for lots of other boxers. He's been very much a gravy train. I'm told that he is really dedicated behind the scenes. We don't see a lot of him, by the way. We only see him in fight weeks and, you know, in the odd training day. You know, they're very much less is more. I just think that he's come up against. There's a couple of guys in this generation, in this boxing era, in Alexander Usyk and Tyson Fury, who have greater skills than him. And I think at the very elite level, at the very top, where changing the pattern of a fight or changing the pattern of a game, whatever it is, relies on a brilliance, he's just fallen short with his boxing abilities. I think he has got a lot of interests outside, but as far as I can see, he's utterly dedicated to his task.
From Fury's perspective, was this the richest fight available to him, do you think? Because, again, talking about motivation, you've explained really well what Joshua's motivation is. It's a massive gamble, but there is also then, if he performs well in defeat, those other fights against Wilder, I think in particular, would definitely have a market. From Fury's perspective, is he just ticking stuff off before he finishes, or is it like, well, that's the easiest fight that I can make and make the most money off? What do you think is going on in his head when he's engaged in that game of bluff that ultimately he wins?
Well, that's a thesis question, really, because what's going on in Tyson Fury's head at 8:07 in the morning on a Wednesday morning is such a deep subject that probably he doesn't even know. You know, Tyson Fury is a law unto himself. I mean, if I was to mooch around in his head right now, obviously, as we know with Tyson, he retires and he's going to fight. I mean, I remember him telling me, I did a couple of tour dates with him recently. You know, his after party tour, his homecoming tour. And, you know, he was genuinely on the phone that night in Bristol when I was with him on stage. He was on the phone to the world's strongest man, The Mountain, talking about having a fight with him in November. That was probably a few weeks ago. He is thinking, he did, I did get teased and warmed up that he was having a fight with Derek Chisora. I had heard about Manuel Charr in the background. I think for Tyson Fury, the transformation in him as a person and his public-facing persona is, you know, someone who, he's a huge star, isn't he? He's become a massive mainstream star in a different way to that which Anthony Joshua is. And I think he's conflicted. I think he wants to walk away, but then when he doesn't box or goes to the gym for a while, I think his mind wanders and he's not as happy. And obviously, he's definitely devoted to his family. I've been around him with his family. He loves his family. There's no doubt about that. But with his mental health issues, I think he needs to be active and needs to be creative. He's found an avenue there, you know, with the WW. He turns up in Cardiff and he, you know, forearm smashes someone in the WWE, and it looks like he's just stood up and done it from the VIP seats. But it's all kind of organised. There's so much he can do. There's a Netflix series being made about him at the moment. There's a third book out. There's his Ferocity drinks. I think all these things with Fury, he needs to be busy. So I think in his mind, kind of in pugilistic terms, I think he's definitely, in his mind, I genuinely think he wanted to fight Joshua and he wanted to fight Usyk. And after that, there isn't really anyone else. He may fight Wilder for a fourth time, but I remember asking him after the third Wilder fight, is that enough now? And there's a part of him that thinks it's enough. He has spoken to me about the dangers of being in big bruising fights. I mean, he has been dropped 4 times by Wilder. He's been in big bruising fights. So I think, to go back to 2 weeks ago, I think it was a bluff. I think he thought, you know what, I don't want a treading water fight because Usyk doesn't want to fight me, because they planned to fight Usyk on December the 17th. Usyk said he wasn't ready. He was obviously buying time to be ultimately in his fittest possible condition to fight Fury. So Usyk withdrew until it was going to be February next year. And then Fury thought, I don't want a treading water fight in December. And I think he sat there one day and he went, you know what? I'm gonna call Joshua out. And I think that's what happened. And I think because he thought, you know, why don't I fight Joshua now? What's the problem? We're both free. I can't fight Usyk yet. And I think that's what happened. I think that's how we've got here today. That's my theory on it.
So his plan is to have that fight, win that fight, and then fight Usyk. And from a boxing perspective, perhaps right off into the sunset of WWE or some, you know, like Ali style fighting kind of.
Well, whoever. Yeah, exhibitions. Yeah. And we see it all the time now. I mean, Mayweather's going down the list, isn't he? I think Conor McGregor will do it at some point. You know, it's what's going on right now. I mean, it's just one of those things. If you can get eyes on it, you can. But I think you're right. I think beat Joshua, beat Usyk. He doesn't really. He's the veritable number one. He's the king of the jungle in this era, in the heavyweight era. There's no question about it. If he beats those two, but it's conceivable if the Joshua Fury fight is entertaining and goes 12 rounds and goes points, which is definitely possible. Then they do it again, you know, and then, you know, he stretches out fighting Usyk the year after, or whoever it is at that point. Maybe it's Joe Joyce who's beaten Parker, who wins the WBO, and you know, Fury's 34. I mean, I think he could easily, heavyweights are in their prime at this age. He could easily go on to 36, but you know, how much is enough? You know,
you said there, you know, 12 rounds could be quite possible, Gareth, and I know it's early to be having this look ahead, and the bookies have probably had their say in terms of who the favourite is already. We had Gavin Casey, the Irish boxing journalist, on off the ball quite recently, and he said if they fought 10 times, Fury probably wins all 10. But you have to remember he was dropped by Wilder as well. Like, is there any argument you can make for Anthony Joshua beating Tyson Fury?
Yeah, you can. He's got a massive puncher's chance, and he's. It only takes a prime Fury on the night wins. There's no question in my mind. But a slightly off-kilter Fury, or one that gets injured during the fight, or one who's too reckless, you can't write Anthony Joshua off completely. He does have a chance, but definitely. But for me, I think if Fury goes in that trance-like state, I think he keeps Joshua in control behind his jab. He ties him up. He moves. There's probably a couple of moments of drama, but I think he breaks him down. And, you know, Joshua's shown some vulnerability around the chin as well. So I see an 8th, 9th round stoppage for Fury. That's how I see the fight.
This is, we expect it to be made this week if it's going to get made. Like, it's going to happen very quickly. The date seems to be December the 3rd in Cardiff. The split seems to be 60-40. A lot of those details have been made public in a way that suggests that those conversations have been had. You know, just from watching these stories over the years, there's a lot of detail here versus some previous times where, this fight's about to be made and we don't really know the terms of it. So is everything acceptable, do you think, at this stage? Is your instinct, I know you said you wouldn't be surprised either way, but is your instinct that we're more likely to see this happen? And if it is going to happen, it's going to happen in the next 48 hours or so?
I'm sorry to give you a kind of really anodyne answer, but my instinct is to be sceptical.
Right.
Because, yes, the initial agreements are there, the fight agreements, December 3rd, Cardiff, these two guys, 60-40 split. But now we're into the detail. The contract went over last Friday. Obviously, the death of Elizabeth II, the Queen, caused a bit of delay because they didn't want to they wanted to, be respectful and not, get into the detail in that period, and wanted a couple of days off because people were mourning and the country was in mourning. So, and again, yesterday will have delayed it. So, it depends whether they agree on the fine print now. The broadcasters we hear are on board. I spoke to Eddie Hearn last week. I think Thursday he was in Las Vegas for Canelo and Golovkin, and he was saying that they're just about to get the contract. They got the contract on Friday. It all comes down to that detail on whether they agree on it. What those things are, we don't know at the moment. Obviously Fury will walk last. He's the champion, all those kind of things. But it's whether they really want it now. And if they do really want it, we will get the fight. Okay.
Well, we're looking forward to it. And as you said, we are excited about it genuinely at this stage because it's not too late. It's not. It doesn't have the bang of Mayweather, Pacquiao, which was like 2 years after we actually really wanted to see it. This is still just in that window where we think, okay, this is good. One thing I did want to ask.
They're still in their prime. They're still in their prime, so it's fine, in my view. It's just, Joshua's been a little bit exposed by a boxer with brilliant skills who's smaller and waspish in the ring and moves around very cleverly. But, He's not a busted flush in my view. I mean, he has been a little bit gun shy. That was a much improved performance in Saudi.
Yeah, I think that's all fair. One last thing I just wanted to ask you. Chris Eubank Sr. has been very public about his concern about the make-weight fight that Chris Eubank Jr. is going to fight Conor Ben in basically less than a month. It's a couple of weeks now at the O2 Arena. It's 157 pounds is the weight. Is Chris Eubank Sr., does he have a point here?
Yeah, he does, because it is dangerous when you're cutting weight. But Chris made 160 regularly. He's got to lose 3 more pounds. It's not inordinate. The Boxing Board of Control are monitoring. I spoke to them last week when Chris Eubank Sr. raised those concerns. I did speak to the Boxing Board, and they said they're monitoring regularly on the way to the weigh. And I've had a very deep conversation with Chris. I think I wrote a piece in the Telegraph about it last week, actually, in which Chris was saying he's not taking a nutritionist, which seems a little bit foolhardy, but he's got notes from his entire career on what foods were good and bad for him. And he said if he gets close to the fight and he isn't dropping those final, say, 3 or 4 pounds, then he will, get help on board. Look, I think his father raised concerns. He's lost one son already tragically last year, so that's a father-son conversation. Chris wants his father in the corner, but I think I think it's a fight that will go ahead. Yes, he's made those concessions. It's very big over here, this fight. It's a lot of interest in it. DAZN are using it like they did with Canelo and Golovkin and KSI and Swarms, if I can say that, because I was at that with TalkSport the other day as well. It sold out the O2 Arena as well in a couple of hours. YouTube celebrity boxing, and I think there's concerns on both sides because Ben is coming up. Conor Ben is coming up in a lot of weight as well. It's 2 weight divisions. Welterweight to middleweight is always a big challenge. Sugar Ray Leonard did it successfully against Marvin Hagler all those years ago in a fight where he was elusive. But it's the other way around in this contest. It's Ben who likes to come forward against Eubank, who's very, very. He's a very resilient fighter. Who's I think is underrated. Chris Eubank Jr. I think he's underrated in his career. He's been in with some really good opponents. They only lost to George Groves and Billy Joe Saunders. No harm there. Look what George Groves did. Look what Billy Joe Saunders did. So I think it's a terrific fight. Yes, there are always concerns about cutting weight because it's not good for the membrane around the brain. It's not good for the inherent dangers that exist in boxing, but these fighters want these fights, and they're also earning extraordinary amounts of money, Ger, for doing this.
Gareth, we'll leave it there. Always great to talk to you. Thanks a million for joining us. Gareth A. Davies there, giving us the insight into what's going to happen over the next while. 48 hours or so, I think, is we're going to hear more news now that the funeral is over, and people feel free to have conversations about it.
Yeah, I'm reminded when he was talking about Chris Eubank there about when I was speaking to Barry Hearn about 6 months ago for an interview. Barry Hearn, famously, of course, Chris Eubank's manager, and like he spoke about Eubank's fight against Juan Carlos Jimenez in Manchester, where Eubank moved up to super middleweight but still struggled to make the weight. And 2 days before the fight, Eubank rings Barry Hearn and says, "I want you to come down and meet me." Barry Hearn goes down and meets him, and he just pulls down his trousers, exposes himself, and he had got a circumcision done 2 days before a super middleweight fight, and had, because he was obviously afraid of the drugs that they might put in his system, local anaesthetic. You can imagine the pain he was in. And if you even see from that fight, like they obviously wrapped socks and stuff underneath so he wouldn't damage himself too badly, but Jimenez is hitting him in that area, and Hearn says for the entire fight he was just wincing at the fight. So yeah, Chris Eubank is made of stern stuff, let's just say.
OTB AM brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Nathan Murphy is standing by. We're going to talk to him next. He's picking his Ireland 11 for the game against Scotland this weekend. Stay tuned.
OTB AM. This is OTB Sports Radio.
OTB Sports Rugby.
Luke Fitzgerald's been banging on about Frawley for years about how he should be playing 10 and he's wasted at 12, and you look at him and physically he's very robust. He looks like the closest thing there is to Johnny Sexton physically.
Subscribe to the rugby stream on the OTB Sports app now.
Celebrate European Week of Sport this September at the Be Active Festival. An action-packed day out for the whole family at Sport Ireland Campus, Blanchardstown. Come and try new sports, fitness challenges and skill tests at Ireland's biggest sporting festival. Meet sporting legends. Check out the Inflatable Zone, Village Food Market and much more. There's something for everyone at the Be Active Festival. Saturday, September 24th at Sport Ireland Campus, Blanchardstown. Book your tickets now at beactivefestival.ie.
If your business relies on a van, that wouldn't sound good. But this does. Get up to 75% off van insurance. Now available in FBD branches nationwide. FBD Insurance. Support. It's what we do. 75% no claims discount based on 5 years claims free. Available on new van policies used for farm or business purposes. Terms and conditions apply. Underwritten by FBD Insurance plc. FBD Insurance Group Limited, trading as FBD Insurance, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
OTB AM.
With Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
All right, Nathan, good morning to you. How are you?
Morning, lads.
You're picking a 3-5-2 for us. Are you picking the team you think is going to play, or are you picking, I am God, I am Nathan Murphy, this is my team, beat that Scotland?
I think it's a bit of both. I think myself and Stephen Kenny are on the same wavelength. When it comes
simpatico.
To talent
football men,
yeah. Exactly. Yeah, I think it's actually a relatively straightforward team if everybody stays fit over the course of this week, with maybe one decision to be made at the back. But aside from that, if Stephen Kenny looks at the last two performances, it seems quite straightforward. It does feel as though the defeat against Ukraine was maybe a line in the sand for certain players. Jeff Hendrick dropped out of the team. Chidozie Ogbene dropped out of the team. Callum Robinson dropped out of the team. And they now need to find a way somehow back into the team. And they may well be reliant on other players picking up injuries. So it obviously moves quite quickly, because if you think back to this time last year, Callum Robinson was the man for the future. Andre Omobamidele was the man for the future. Omobamidele ruled out means it'll be a year since he's even been in the squad, which is a huge setback for him and for Ireland at this stage of his career. But other young players have come in and taken their opportunities. So these are two big games. I know I come on every Nations League campaign on the Tuesday, Wednesday ahead of the matches, and everyone's like, who gives a damn about these things?
Well, let's just briefly talk about that, because really we shouldn't care too much about this. The Euros and the qualifiers are coming down the tracks. We're going to desperately hope that the group of players who we field in most of those games are ready for that, and that's essentially what this campaign should be about. Although I understand that there is a backdoor into the tournament, and so therefore, we shouldn't write it off. However, that all changed when Stephen Kenny said, I think we can win the group, and that brought extra pressure and extra scrutiny, and so therefore, the games do matter in a way that maybe they shouldn't.
Yeah, and he said that when he was in a position of weakness, I would say, and he was looking to sort his new contract and was under pressure and was obviously developing a lot of players and realised that they weren't going to be successful in the World Cup qualification and sort of just tried to push everything down the track. Now, Ireland aren't going to win this group. Even if they win the 2 games, it's highly unlikely they end up winning this group. Ukraine have 7 points. They've played 3 matches. They go and beat Armenia or they beat Scotland tomorrow night. They'll end up topping this group. There is still a possibility that Ireland could become second seeds for the draw for the Euros. So that draw takes place in a couple of weeks' time in Germany. Ireland, as it stands, are third seeds. We know 2 teams qualify automatically, and then you are into the playoff system where, in all likelihood, as you say, Ireland will have that back door again from the Nations League, regardless of what happens, which we had last time and didn't take advantage of with the game against Slovakia. But there is a possibility if Ireland win the 2 games, they could just sneak in as second seeds. At the moment, France and England are among the second seeds. So you do not want to be in a scenario where you could get Spain and England in your group. Glamour ties, full houses at the Aviva Stadium, but realistically, not much chance of finishing in the top 2.
3-0. Yeah.
You've got another year of learning and waiting for 1 game in a playoff. So there is an importance to these 2 matches, and I think more than anything, it's just to keep the momentum building, because every time Stephen Kenny and this group have taken a step forward, the step back has been too big. The setback has been too great that it felt like it's undermined everything. So if you write off even the Nations League campaign at the start, which I think we should because of all the messing that was going on with COVID, just the performance in Portugal, minutes away from this historic result. You think that's it. This is the real beginning of the Kenny era. And then they go and they draw with Azerbaijan, even Serbia. They lose to Luxembourg straight afterwards. There's 6 months. There's 6 months of building again. Portugal come to town. There's a good result. Callum Robinson starts to score a few goals. There's the great draw against Belgium in front of a big crowd at the Aviva. And again, it's all set up nicely for the Summer Nations League campaign where you feel he has this group. Everybody's into double figures in terms of caps. And then you lose over in Armenia. They lose at Ukraine. And it's this massive setback. And these things do turn quickly. Remember, we were going into that home game against Scotland thinking if Ireland don't get something out of this, regardless of his contract, Stephen Kenny's under pressure. And I still think that mindset is probably there, that we're in a very comfortable place. And Stephen Kenny right now is in a very comfortable place because of the brilliance of the victory against Scotland and how well they performed over in Ukraine. But you're going to Hampden Park and then have Armenia at home. If there's a repeat of Azerbaijan or Luxembourg against Armenia at home, all those questions are going to come up again. Now, there's nothing to suggest that should happen because of the quality of the recent performances and how a lot of these younger players have emerged and developed. But I don't think it's totally on steady ground just yet.
Okay, so give us your team.
Well, I think Gavin Bazunu comes back in goals. Caoimhín Kelleher obviously started the last run of games with Bazunu injured, but now it's flipped and Kelleher misses out, so it's very straightforward. Bazunu is playing every week in the Premier League. Obviously took a lot of criticism at the weekend for his role in the Aston Villa goal. He is still the youngest goalkeeper playing in the Premier League week in, week out. So he's going to make his mistakes.
To be honest, but I'm a bit biased. Didn't think it was his fault. He pushes it onto the crossbar. At that stage, some of his defenders need to react. Anyway, go on.
They do, but it was too heavy a hand. He needs to push it over the top of the crossbar. It felt as though he was trying to keep it in play for some reason where he just need to palm it over. Listen, it's a very close range opportunity. I don't think it'll be in an end of season bloopers reel or anything like that. It was a mistake in a terrible game of football that ends up costing Southampton the match. So it's going to be zoned in on. But I don't think we've got any real doubts. And Bazunu is one of these players now. He's on to 13 caps. So there is a bit of experience. He's not going to be overawed going over to Scotland. So that's straightforward. Defensively, the back 2 of the 3 are automatic at this stage. Nathan Collins scored that wonder goal over in Ukraine in Ireland's last match, which feels like a lifetime ago. He's an automatic choice now, which again, from a year ago, he's only got 6 caps. He's only 21, but he's an automatic choice in that Irish defence. And John Egan will play as well. Another automatic starter, always plays when he's fit for Stephen Kenny. And he's coming into this camp with lots of confidence. Sheffield United are top of the championship. He's playing every minute for them. So Egan will play on the left. Collins will be in there. The one decision, I think, is whether it's Seamus Coleman, Shane Duffy, or Darragh O'Shea, who is the third. My sense is that he will stick with Duffy. I know he's barely played for Fulham a couple of minutes right at the end of Premier League games. It's a month since he last had a match. And Stephen Kenny has dropped him before. Obviously, when he was struggling at Celtic, he left him out over in Serbia and for that game against Luxembourg. I think that was a very different scenario where his confidence was absolutely shot. He was obviously still struggling personally after the death of his dad, and there was a lot going on with Shane Duffy. And think Stephen Kenny almost took him out of the limelight. Duffy's on the bench every week in the Premier League. He's fit. He only missed the game against Ukraine because he was suspended. He was one of Ireland's better players in the 3 games before that. So I think Duffy might just be the one.
But Nathan, if club form matters one iota, Duffy not playing whatsoever, and someone like Ger O'Shea playing every single game this season for West Brom, captaining them a few times as well, scoring goals, is it just a case of you need one experienced head in there that's probably the reason Dara doesn't get in?
Egan's there.
Well, yeah, true.
Egan is there as well.
It's that
Stephen Kenny has contradicted himself over the past couple of weeks because he has to, because he can't make a hard and fast rule.
Horses for courses.
He's saying experience is very important, he's been saying, but at the same time he wants players who are in form.
Yeah.
So that's the balance he's going to have to weigh up. You're right, Ger O'Shea playing every game, scored at the weekend, did well over in Ukraine. Like, it's brilliant to see him back. He obviously had the huge setback with the horrible injury he picked up against Portugal just over a year ago, and he didn't look right when he played and he came on against Lithuania in the friendly, and didn't look great in the home game when he came on against Ukraine, but he looked a lot more assured. But he's in a very different place physically. So maybe he does look at the fitness and assesses things over the next 3 or 4 days and decides that Ger O'Shea will play on the right. You play Nathan Collins then in the middle and John Egan on the left-hand side, or maybe you play Egan in the middle, Collins. He can play whatever 3 he wants there, really. The only thing with Coleman, and it does feel as though, because Coleman hasn't played at all in the Premier League, he's just got 1 game in the League Cup, and he's 34. His last game against Armenia was a real struggle. Stephen Kenny's admitted he probably shouldn't have played him in that he was still struggling with a hamstring injury. When Coleman is fit, Kenny plays him. You might remember he left him out of the team for his first 2 matches when they were playing a back 4, and he played Matt Doherty over in Bulgaria in the first game and then against Finland, and Coleman was stuck on the bench. We sort of thought that was it. Now, he's had never-ending run of injuries. He's missing camps constantly. But when he's played in the competitive games, he has started. When he's been available, he has always started for Kenny, either on the right wing or in the midfield 3. So it's still a big decision, I think, for Stephen Kenny to drop his captain. Now, he'll never have an easier opportunity than right now to drop Seamus Coleman. I don't think after what happened in Armenia, he's realistically an option at right wing back when they have Matt Doherty fit and Alan Brown is in the squad as well. So my sense is he'll side with Duffy and the experience of Duffy over in Scotland, and maybe O'Shea comes in for the game at home against Armenia. But he's got some nice options there.
He picked Collins, Duffy and Egan in the Scotland game that we won 3-0. That's our last game. Is there a possibility he just goes, right, you're my 3? Because is there a possibility he doubles down on that team and says, you did really well for me there, lads. Now, Matt Doherty wasn't unavailable, so you have to assume Matt Doherty's going to play, but is there an excuse for Matt Doherty? Like, he's not playing football at the moment. Is there just not quite sure he's back from his injury? Want to give him a bit longer?
There is an excuse if he wants an excuse. I think Matt Doherty's been Stephen Kenny's best player since he took over. He has really risen to the occasion. He looks like a player who's playing for a top 6 team in the Premier League, or is around top 6 players. And he was definitely a big loss during that campaign. And you're right, that home game against Scotland maybe makes it an easy decision. They played so well that day. Egan and Duffy then missed the next game for suspension, and Egan just couldn't travel, so he had to bring in Ger O'Shea. So that's why I think Duffy, in the heart of that defence, is probably the most likely scenario. I think Doherty comes back in. It's very, very harsh on Alan Brown, who did really well in the 2 games during the summer, and who is another player that Stephen Kenny seems to really like. But Doherty at right wing back brings a touch of class. He was very good in the couple of friendlies back in March as well. He obviously just hasn't played any football. He's been on the bench. You have to assume if he's on the bench, he's almost at full fitness, or maybe he's quite a bit off it, and that's why Antonio Conte isn't even giving him, 20 minutes, half an hour at the end of games. He's literally only getting a couple of minutes here and there. So I still think Doherty will come in and start ahead of Alan Brown, who's probably in that fortunate position, Shane. Alan Brown's probably the 12th man almost, in a way. He can play in a number of positions, but I think he'll lose out to Doherty.
Was interested to see Nathan Wayne Rooney utilising Jason Knight as kind of a right back almost position in a couple of games recently. I think Stephen Kenny has all but ruled him out as a right wing back.
You forgot Wayne Rooney's gone.
Wayne Rooney's gone.
Yeah.
Sorry, not Wayne Rooney, but Derby County generally. But is that a realistic option, or is that just a backup if all goes to shit and Matt Doherty can't play? That he is an option at right back, right wing back maybe.
No, I don't think so. Stephen Kenny said himself he doesn't see him as a right back, and I think he was a bit bemused by the fact that Jason Knight has been playing there. Now, he was back playing in a more regular midfield position at the weekend for Derby, and I think everyone was surprised to see him. Like Liam Rosini has said, he would try to sign a couple of right backs, couldn't get there, and maybe it shows just how professional Jason Knight is and how talented he is that the manager feels he can take him out and throw him in at right back. No, I think the pecking order right now for that right wing back position is Matt Doherty clearly away at number 1, Alan Brown maybe number 2, Seamus Coleman number 3. Chio Ogbene has played there at times as well, so I don't see any scenario. From everything Stephen Kenny said over the last few weeks, there's no suggestion that even if they were somehow stuck, that he would throw Jason Knight in. I think he sees him as too important in that other part of the field.
Okay, we've talked about the back. You've got Doherty, you've made it clear, Doherty's starting the game. Who's starting your left wing back?
James Mclean. Again, I think it's a straightforward decision. Why would you drop Mclean? He's in arguably the best form of his career for his club, for his country as well. He's the most experienced player in the squad. He's heading rapidly towards 100 caps. He's back in the championship, and by all accounts he's playing well. All the reports you hear from Wigan are that the fans are loving him and they're loving the quality of his performances. And it's an incredible rejuvenation, because Mclean was one of those who people assumed when Stephen Kenny came in would be quickly to the sideline, that all action style of play might be not composed enough for Stephen Kenny, but he has stepped up when he's been asked to, and Ryan Manning hasn't even been included in the squad. Robbie Brady, it's a very good news story to see Robbie Brady back in the squad for the first time in 18 months. It's probably a little bit too soon for him to start either of these games. Like Stephen Kenny, from day one, used to name check Robbie Brady as one of the players he was most looking forward to working with. But like, what's gone on with Robbie Brady over the last 5 years? Like, he hasn't had a season where he's played even half the games over the last 4 or 5 years. But he's finally got a club at Preston. He was up in front of the media yesterday, buzzing to be back and talking about the mental load of the struggles with injury and not having a club, having to go back and trial with clubs to prove himself. He's obviously very close to the camp. Damien Doyle, who's the fitness coach, basically took him under his wing during the summer to get him right up to speed. So it's no surprise that once he was back playing, and he is back playing.
I think he was out training at Alsa. I think he was out training at Alsa. Somebody said, like, watching the planes fly overhead, thinking, I'm quite far from the Premier League here. I think it was him, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. Yeah. Damien Doyle, the fitness coach out there, basically was taking him for strength and conditioning sessions to get him ready. Had options, went to Preston, and it's working out. Obviously, Preston aren't going particularly well this season, but he's playing matches. Over the next couple of years, he can definitely get himself back into the mix and maybe take that left wing spot, or maybe in a slightly more advanced role in the team. But it's probably a little bit too soon from definitely on Saturday against Scotland.
Shane Dunn says, bring Brady back in the left wing back role, LWB role. That's how the kids talk these days. Wand of a left foot, he says. A wand.
Set piece specialist.
Yeah, with Howrahan not playing, you kind of need that, don't you?
You do. In Ireland's set pieces, I think we're a little bit better in the last couple of camps. There was definitely a struggle at the start when Howrahan and Brady weren't on the pitch, but I don't think Robbie Brady gets in just on set pieces alone. James Mclean ain't getting any younger, so there is perhaps an opportunity for Robbie Brady over the next 18 months to take that spot on the team. But Mclean has done nothing wrong. I know Mclean gets incredibly harsh criticism at times from Irish supporters, but I think now is the time you cannot really question his selection at all.
Then you've got 72 hours before Tuesday night, Nathan. Like, is would you expect Stephen Kenny to kind of alter the team drastically or not drastically, or just see a couple of different names from Scotland to Armenia?
Well, he's always had to change the team. Like, the way these international breaks work is you wake up on Sunday morning and 4 players have left the squad, and it's 3 changes and 5
COVID
changes.
Outbreak.
So ideally, I'd imagine he'd look at it and think everybody's fully fit and I can play them again. If he could go and win in Scotland, it gives him a bit of breathing space to maybe try something different against Armenia. Really try and dominate a game possession-wise and add something different in. But right now, I think it's very hard to predict what he'd do on Tuesday without seeing what happens on Saturday night. I think these are the players in possession right now, so I wouldn't expect widespread changes if everybody can stay fit.
That's the thing, isn't it? And also, if they win, you're not changing the team. But if they get hammered, you're changing the team.
Yeah.
And
well, if you get hammered in Scotland, you're fighting for your life on Tuesday night. Is the problem when you're the Ireland manager?
Do you think that? Do you really think that? Like, have we not settled all that for now? That this campaign, because of the back-to-back defeats, it's very unlikely that anything significantly really good is going to happen here, unless we were to win these 2 games, in which case it's completely off the table. But notwithstanding that, this is going to be our manager for the European campaign. Surely the FAI are not going to walk into another massive row. Oh, that mic's on there.
I assume so. I assume that he will be. But I think we would have sat here at the beginning of June and said Stephen Kenny's just signed a new contract till the end of Euro 24. And after that defeat to Ukraine at home, having lost in Armenia, there was huge pressure on that home game against Scotland that they had to do something. And a real worry with those performances that, remember, it was a Ukraine B team that had beaten Ireland, that Ireland still had to go to Ukraine to face their full strength side. But actually, they turned it around. And look, I think the players clearly have bought into it. There are definite signs of progression. There are moments, and many more moments in every game, where they're performing at a very high level. They're playing a different style of football. You can tell when they're at the Aviva that the crowd very much believe in what Stephen Kenny is trying to do. But he's been undermined by just very, very bad defeats from Luxembourg, the draw at home against Azerbaijan, losing over in Armenia. So right now we sit here and say, yes, Stephen Kenny is comfortable. If, as you say, somehow it was to go horribly wrong in Scotland and you were to lose at home to Armenia, you're in trouble, no matter who the Ireland manager is.
Josh Cullen's move has been good for him in terms of profile. He's been doing really well. He's straightened the team. Everybody knows that. But you have Malumbi in the team. He liked Malumbi, but Malumbi hasn't quite hit the height at international games that we think he's capable of. And yet, he's actually playing really well for West Brom at the moment. So this is a selection based on club form?
No, it's a selection based on the last two games where Jeff Hendrick started in Armenia and at home against Ukraine and didn't perform. And Jason Malumbi got his chance in that game against Scotland and over in Ukraine and played well. I think he was outstanding, but it did feel as though that was maybe a shift for Stephen Kenny, that Jeff Hendrick now wasn't playing club football at the time. He wasn't getting a game at Queen's Park Rangers. He's been playing every week for Reading. So maybe Hendrick has come back a very different player physically and is ready to slot back into the midfield. But based on what we saw in the two games and two very strong performances against Scotland and Ukraine, Malumbi played in those games alongside Cullen. So why would Stephen Kenny change it, considering, again, he's playing every week, you just say, quite well, it seems, with West Brom in the Championship. He's up to 14, 15 caps at this stage, so there's a bit of experience there. And it does feel, as I said at the start, that Hendrick, Robinson, Ogbene were the losers from that June campaign, and now they need to somehow find a way back in. But Jason Malumbi's done nothing wrong over the last two games, so why drop him?
Yeah, okay, so he's in the team, and then you're sticking with Knight, Obafemi and Parrott.
Yeah, I think, again, you go with what played so well against Scotland, like the attacking quality, the attacking play. That day was as good as we've seen from Ireland in recent times. They absolutely love Jason Knight in that Ireland camp. By all accounts, a really good lad, really good attitude. You say everybody's eyebrows raised that he's playing it right back, that he also didn't get a move in the Championship because he's still only 21. It does seem as though Derby wanted a lot of money for him, and that if you're a Championship manager where your shelf life is 6 months, that maybe you're not going to make that massive investment in a 21-year-old who will develop over the coming years. You want someone who can make an instant impact right now. So Stephen Kenny has said that he doesn't see him as a right back. I would expect him. I think he is that perfect link man where it looks like you're playing three, but actually he drops deeper into midfield. So he'll play. Troy Parris is at a stage now where, again, it hasn't kicked on from a club level. He has played 10 games for Preston, hasn't scored a goal. Now, Preston have been bizarre this season. They've played 10 games, they've scored 3 goals all season as a club. So maybe we shouldn't put all of that on Troy Parrott. But again, he's another player that Stephen Kenny's invested time, effort in. He's at a stage now with 15 caps, albeit still only 20, that he played so well, I think, in the game against Scotland where he scored the goal and he set off Michael Obafemi, that he has done enough to stay ahead of Callum Robinson. And then Michael Obafemi's back. He obviously was brilliant against Scotland, ended up picking up an injury in that game, missed out on the trip to Ukraine, has had a lot going on at club level with his manager, and that deadline day move to Burnley. But it felt like we got something with Michael Obafemi. The Michael Obafemi we've been waiting many, many years for. The guy we saw scoring against Manchester United, the guy who we expected to be a big part of this team for 2 or 3 years. He's still only on 4 caps, but the quality of that performance against Scotland, I think, gets him into the side. And the only real other option is Callum Robinson, who made his summer move to Cardiff, hasn't got a goal yet, and hasn't really kicked on since that brilliant few games against Azerbaijan.
We need him
to Qatar.
Play some club football. Michael Obafemi, 22 years of age, born in the year 2000, so still has plenty.
But this is it. Like we sort of talk about the development. Like Michael Obafemi, 22, Troy Parrott, 20, Jason Knight, 21, Jason Malumbi, 23.
Yeah.
Nathan Collins, another kid at 21. Gavin Bazunu. So these are players that Stephen Kenny spent a lot of time with over the last couple of years. He's got them to a stage where they know the camp inside out, where they're well into double figures with caps.
All right.
So there's no great experimentation needed. Like this, in a way, still is experimentation. And I think that's
good stuff.
Pretty much, unless something emerges, that'll be the team.
Nathan, good stuff. Thanks a million. That's Nathan's team this morning. You can leave your team in the comments for us on YouTube, or you can tweet us at Off The Ball AM. A reminder, Braeburn Coffee is the official coffee partner of OTB. Every week we're giving one lucky viewer a €100 voucher to spend on some Braeburn coffee goodness at an Apple Green store near you. To enter, check out @OffTheBall on Twitter, like and retweet our Braeburn competition post and you'll be in the draw. Braeburn Coffee never compromises on quality or taste to give you the best on-the-go coffee experience on the road. It's available at Apple Green today. Now, John Duggan, good morning to you.
Ger and Shane, how are you doing?
How are you?
Not bad yourselves.
Give us your 3 Tuesday takeaways this week.
Well, Youngman's son brings so much joy to my life.
Good sub to have.
Yeah, good lad to have. I love the fact that Conte said that I don't care if he's annoyed or not or frustrated, and put it up to him, and he channeled that frustration into pure brilliance, and once the first one goes in, then it all just turns out beautifully.
Conte looks like a genius now.
Well, Conte is a genius.
Well, he is.
Until he has a strop and leaves. And Son, like the first goal, I love the way the Spurs played a bit more direct, which I think they needed to do against Leicester. Runs at pace and then just whips it into the top corner. Second goal on the other side with the left foot, bending it around into the other corner, and then had the conviction to score the third and go for the jugular with it. So Richarlison started the season well, and now with Son now becoming Son again, it's definitely an exciting time.
Really interested to read. It was a piece in one of the papers, the English papers this morning, talking about, like, obviously the fanfare over Son in South Korea and the fact that he's off on an international window now. The focus would have been so dramatically on him if he hadn't scored the hat-trick, maybe. I think Paulo Bento in his press conference, the South Korean manager, was asked about it consistently as Son was out of form. Like, and that's probably one of the reasons South Korea haven't pushed on since that 2002 World Cup performance, where he is literally the man. Almost a demigod in South Korea, and they don't have players of that ilk around him. But the pressure on him in a country like that must be immense. When you're the guy in the country, obviously he's the star man.
I think he's quite good at handling pressure. He does get a bit annoyed with himself. He's a bit of a perfectionist. You can see even the stress of his reaction to the first goal, like it was almost the relief. But I think he's generally quite a guy who plays with a smile on his face, and I think he's generally always embraced his national identity and iconic status in Korea. It's interesting because I was going through it was on the BBC website today, the influencers, because obviously he'd probably be the main influencer in Korea. But like Cristiano Ronaldo, 480 million followers and generates more than $3.5 million per Instagram post of media value. Lionel Messi has 360 million followers, generating $2.6 million of media value per post. Interesting, the most influential English player is Jadon Sancho. So Ronaldo and Sancho, both Man United players.
There you go.
Sancho's a bust.
Show pony the Sancho.
He's a bust, Ger.
The new Pogba, is that what we're saying?
Well, the second takeaway is that you can see it positively or negatively, the return of Jack McCaffrey and Paul Mannion to the fold. Positively in that they've, in metaphorical terms, not literal terms, decided to go for one last heist at the jewellers.
I'm looking forward to the dub telling us what the negative of Mannion and McCarthy.
Well, the negative is that where are the new Mannion and McCarthy? Where are the new guys? Who are the new guys coming through? But this is the Kerry defeat was painful for Dublin. I know that Dublin have dominated the landscape for the last 10 years and won 6 in a row, etc., etc. But the Sean O'Shea thing, that was painful, and I think that Kerry being the All-Ireland champions might have been a motivator for these guys to come back. And obviously they've got a relationship with Dessie Farrell. And if Jack McCaffrey has the same level of pace in his game, then it's really exciting. Because to me, he's a motorbike. He's a Ferrari. He's one of the best players I've ever seen. Maybe Jimmy Connolly might be a better player, but Jack McCaffrey's one of the best players I've ever seen live in a against pitch.
So ridiculously effective.
Yeah.
Like, that was the thing. It was he's going to do one of his things where he's going to do this. You know what he's going to... It's going to... What? He just did it.
Yeah.
You can't stop it. You can't stop it, yeah.
But the problem, like, he came back from injury before. I remember in that Longford game in Leinster Championship a few years ago, and he looked faster than he had ever had. Like, I know was it the AFL Combine where he ran 2.8 seconds over 20 metres. I think the record is 2.78. Like, he is a...
I didn't know that.
Motor.
Right.
And that just probably put the numbers on it. He's talked himself about how he thinks he's faster with the ball in his hand. But I think he's actually said before that he thinks Paul Mannion is faster than him, which I find hard to believe, but Mannion's no slouch either.
Well, Mannion's dominated the club game in recent years, and
even this year as well, he's been unbelievable for...
Yeah, so obviously he doesn't really need to do much, as it were, to just go back into the blue jersey and do what he needs to do. But that drawn final, McCaffrey in that drawn final was just... I think he's got 1-3, I think he got from play.
He did say that drain was so much. So I don't know, we should definitely enjoy this for however long it lasts. It might be one last hurrah. Maybe they're back for 3 or 4 years. Like maybe they've found a way to balance, and they've had those couple of years away. Like the other thing that was interesting to me was that video went up from Dubs TV, and at the same time, Brian Fenton was in Talca Park watching the Shell's Bows game. So he's back from his travels. His Instagram was basically an incredible story of travel over the last 6 months, but he's back. And I wondered, was it coincidence that he's back in Dublin and the two lads are, it's like, you know, you can just feel the assembling, the Avengers assembling.
Favourites now for the All-Ireland next year.
Well, they're not. I mean, they're not by the bookmakers. No. But they're not. Kerry are the favourites.
Well, yeah.
Kerry are going to get the bounce, and I think Kerry will, as I said yesterday, Kerry will be electrified.
Tough to defend.
In their WhatsApp group, what do you think was being said?
Yeah, but it's tough to defend Sam Maguire, lads, and the Dubs are a wounded animal, which, you know, they'll have Division 2 football obviously to contend with at the start of the year first. But I don't like the Dubs being wounded whatsoever. We've just woken up a beast here, Kerry, by winning last year. And would these lads have come back if?
No, I think Kerry's the motivator in my mind.
It is pretty exciting. Maybe if Mayo had won, they'd be like, oh, well, we got to quell them. We got to put them down. But then, sure, look, that's never going to happen, as we know.
I don't know if you guys have discovered the music thing on the Instagram post when you put music to your story. I'm like a child, playing around with that now.
You just discovering that, John? Yeah.
Yeah. It's kind of fun. So I'm just like going through all my favourite songs and what can I put 15 seconds of a favourite song to in terms of picture. So that's how
John discovering the hidden gems of Instagram stories.
Might get to Ronaldo's level. The third takeaway, because there's not much sport on, I was kind of trying to think of something that actually happened. Actually, 30 years ago today, Donegal beat Dublin to win the All-Ireland. Their first ever All-Ireland. They've only won 2. I'll never forget just the absolute stunned. Who are these people, and how are these guys winning All-Irelands and beating us? Because we'd finally shaken off Meath. Well, Meath kind of imploded that season anyway themselves, but to get through Meath, and you think it got a clear run now here at the All-Ireland series, and Donegal beat us 18 points to 14. Manus Boyle got 9 points. Declan Bonner was playing, got the last score of the game. Anthony Malloy captaining. Martin McHugh was Footballer of the Year. Brian McAniff, the godfather of Donegal football, orchestrating the whole thing. And obviously, the Ulster football at the time was king. You know, you knock out, and Donegal the next year lost to Derry, and then we had the Down Derry, probably the game of the ages in '94, and 30 years ago today, Dublin Donegal.
I feel like the Donegal win in '92 was the moment that people realised Ulster was king, because
probably the year before,
Down winning it the year before. Well, Down winning it, but then you needed a second county to come up and step up and win it straight away afterwards. I'm loving these anniversaries. I think the Offaly '82 team were on holidays in sunny Spain or Portugal with each other recently in the last week or two, and I know the Armagh players met up, I think, over the weekend, or certainly the last few days.
Saw those pictures. They all look great.
Serious form.
Yeah.
They're all like, it's hard to believe it's 20 years ago, but they all look ready to play again.
That was the weekend I was down in Mount Juliet that weekend, covering the American Express World Championship, which Tiger Woods won. It was the same day of the Armagh Kerry games. So
heard Oisin McConville, I think he was interviewed in the papers, he was talking about he's only now making peace with the fact that he has only won All-Ireland with Armagh. That, you know, obviously they felt in 03 that they could have gone on to do it.
Dermot
maybe in
Morrison
05.
was very unlucky. Yeah,
like they basically won every Ulster title for 100 years in a row, and then only won one All-Ireland.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, lads, stop winning the Ulster title. It doesn't matter. Throw it in. Just go through the qualifiers.
Yeah.
Tyrone, obviously not laughing at them, and they were the ones where Clonus was being redeveloped, and those were all in Croke Park.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, if Pat Spillane hadn't been telling us all this was terrible football, everybody would have been like agog. These were two of the all-time great teams.
In 05 was one of the great games.
The most tense occasion, the highest level of tackling that we've ever seen, and also some of the greatest forwards we've ever seen finding just that little pocket of space to win a game. And Peter Canavan.
Yeah, awesome.
So you need to come back to, wasn't it? 08, Stephen O'Neill came back from injury retirement to play the final in 2008 for Tyrone. So Mannion and McCarthy, take note. The comebacks sometimes work.
He wasn't very happy with how he performed that day, but he had some bearing in the game, and it was enough to upset the opposition, which is all you need. So sorry, are Dublin going to win the All Ireland on the back of these lads coming back? Is that what you're saying, John?
Yeah, and you can come back to me in a year's time, and we'll play the tape.
Did you sit watching television yesterday all day?
I watched the whole thing. Watched the whole of the Queen's funeral. Because I'm big into history, and it was a historical world event. nothing really to do with liking monarchies and not liking monarchies. And I have the security, and I've no insecurities. I'm a Irish Republican patriot, so. But also, they're our neighbours, and I was interested in the whole vestiges, I suppose, of empire, and the fact that this was a well-regarded person who ruled a country for 70 years. 70 years is not insignificant, and you Joe Biden there, Emmanuel Macron, the Emperor of Japan, and just the whole coverage of it and the whole pomp and ceremony, and I found that quite powerful, actually, and interesting, because you probably haven't had that in Britain since Winston Churchill died. So it was definitely an interesting historical watch to see it all unfold over the few hours, and how it was covered, and how they executed it, as it were.
Hopefully life goes back to normal for our near neighbours now.
Yeah, it'll take a while. My mum's trying to get me to watch The Crown. Apparently it's very interesting.
I can't do it.
I can't do it either. Colin Boog said it's very good. Like, from a historical perspective, I'm sure
I did it because Newstalk asked me to review one of the series, so I did it with Ciara Kelly, and enjoyed it. I'm able to separate whatever my personal feelings are about monarchies and that kind of thing from just maybe the entertainment aspect of The Crown, and
See, I kind of believe that there is that whole soft power element where it's like, but these are all just normal people at the end of the day, apart from the fact that they're like multi billionaires. Like, she was the largest landowner in Britain.
Yeah.
Do you know, that's what we're watching there is like the wealth, and the whole point of the ceremony is to remind you of the power.
Yeah.
And the whole power comes from people saying you have the power. And so it's this kind of the opposite of a virtuous circle where, like, anyway, I actually think that all the TV coverage is way over the top, and I do wonder, is the funeral historic at all? Really, it's just a funeral. Do you know? Like, it's just a funeral. It's not actually a moment of history. Like, the fact that she existed for 70 years, that is historic, but this is just the end of it. It's just a party. Like, that's what I felt about the whole thing, and I watched 3 minutes of it at the end where they were getting into the cars, and I was like, is this even interesting? Who's that? I don't know.
It's funny. I feel like it's going to push people who had set opinions one way or the other. Either way, it's going to push them. Like, people who are massive fans of the monarchy, they're going to be doubling down.
I did watch a good bit of the Oprah interview with Harry and Meghan. I think that they're going to break up the monarchy, because people are like, hang on a second, why are we treating people like this? Now, they'll still be ridiculously wealthy. They'll still be one of the wealthiest families in the world, but people don't talk about that. Like, it's funny, we talk about footballers, and we talk about footballers obscene wealth, and there was a comment earlier on about the wages that Jimmy Garoppolo was earning. Oh, you're normalising obscene wealth. It's like, but I actually feel like all of those people who are working, who are all getting paid to be there, that's the normalisation of the obscene wealth, and it's the justification of it. And so that would be my take on this, is that actually we should turn away, and we should definitely protest this obscene wealth that they have, that they did nothing
by right,
nothing to earn.
What was interesting from me, my perspective was, because I really do feel like that was an end of an era moment yesterday, because
I hope you're right.
70 years, and that's why I watched it. I watched it for the moments, the historical import of it, because I think Britain is on the verge of breaking up, fracturing, because the Scottish want independence. We could be on the road to United Ireland in time. And there's an English nationalist strain to their politics now with the Tories the last 12 years. So you are seeing a country that has got, like, probably got issues potentially with its identity, and the fracturing of Britain could happen. And obviously it's not an empire anymore. So there was a degree of continuity and stability, and whether you agree with what she did or not, she probably did her job quite well. So therefore the end of that and the marking of that was something I was just interested in, because I don't think Prince Charles or King William or King Charles now are going to have the same, maybe love that the Queen seemed to get from her subjects in Britain.
She was an astonishingly good hype woman for that organisation. Like, at the forefront of that, she was astonishingly good at that. I don't think anybody can deny that, and whether or not you think that's a good thing or a bad thing, I suppose, is dependent on your view.
Yeah, like, I read a book on James Connolly, biography of James Connolly quite recently. Two parents from County Monaghan, to get the Monaghan mention in there for the show this morning. Like, his views on the monarchy were, like, I couldn't sum it up any better.
Sensational.
His if you just Google James Connolly quote monarchy, it probably sums up how some of us feel on this island. What I'm really dreading over the next couple of weeks is not just the fact that this mourning period is going to continue, it's the gossip from the funeral is now going to come out. the Meghan did this, Harry did
Oh
this.
yeah, who cares?
The number of tiers Meghan dropped and didn't drop during the funeral.
That's an industry. That's a media industrial complex. Just as much as Trump and all that kind of thing in America's media industrial complex. All about driving ratings and money. That's what that is for the UK.
Yeah.
It also exposes the racism at the heart of their problems with Meghan Markle, which, you know, is endemic in the whole notion of there being a royal family and a bloodline which needs to be kept relatively pure. Like, the whole thing, when you start talking about it, begins to unravel as this, what?
Well, even walking behind the coffin the other day, Harry couldn't wear the whole military honours, and it was funny, like Charles, Margaret, even Edward, all of them were, and Andrew, they were all wearing the military garbs, and Harry was the most modest looking at a couple of badges, and you're asking yourself, which of these people had 2 tours in Afghanistan? And it was Harry, do you know, and yet he is the one diminished and having to not wear the whole military gear behind the coffin. I mean, it's all a bit ridiculous.
I mean, yeah, and then you start asking why were they in Afghanistan as well. So anyway, look, it's 9 o'clock this morning.
All I can say, folks, God bless Ireland.
There you go. Except there is no God. Time for 9 o'clock, time for the papers.
There are so many idiots out there, so many spoofers. There's a lot of horse.
I think he's a total spoofer.
What do you mean a spoofer?
He's just bullshit.
No, Emma, come on, don't be, no, I'm not having that. No.
Before he became a bit of a legend, Romario, the footballer, used to have a saying, there are many kings in this world, but there's only one God. I am Romario, I am God. And then he became like one of the most interesting and influential politicians who had a significant role in bringing down the corruption in the IOC. So if you want to believe in gods, I can believe in Romario. He is one I can get behind. The sports pages for you this morning. Should have had this ready. Unprepared after that. Robbie Brady. Who doesn't want the comeback story for Robbie Brady? Like, still a gifted footballer, a gifted teenager, taking on the books.
A lot of time for Robbie. MC'd a gig in Monaghan a few years ago where he was speaking. Sean McCaffrey was his old coach at underage level, and he was there for a Sean McCaffrey Foundation launch. Great guy. Good to see him back. And he's 30, like he's
31, is he? Yeah,
30 or 31. Yeah.
Clear eyes, full hearts, can't lose. He had microfracture surgery on his knee, which is a horrific kind of injury that really sets you back for ages and ages and ages. They puncture these little holes and to get the marrow, I think it's marrow, something to ooze out, and then that heals. And that was just as he was getting to the point of whether or not he was going to make it at Man United. And then after that, a big setback. And there's our manager, Stephen Kenny, signing autographs for kids at Abbottstown yesterday. And then obviously Dan McDonald's the story about Ahmed being out, so it's Duffy or Coleman who'll end up playing. And it looks like there's going to be a Club World Cup in rugby, which I don't know, maybe it's actually better that they'll play meaningful club games. And
yeah, I listened to Quinny yesterday, and like, rugby needs a bit of a kick up the ass. It needs a rocket. I mean, it just needs something to liven up. The URC really snuck onto the radar at the start of it. I think we only started talking about it in the middle of last week, but I mean, it needs something, and then, you know, the players going off in this Emerging Ireland tour as well, it does diminish it a little bit, doesn't it? Taking away some of the best players from provinces. I don't know.
It's certainly, you can't tell us that this is the best product in the world and then like,
take the players away.
Yeah. The Examiner, you know, like it or not, their sports section, they've got like great stuff on golf. The Hidden Beauty, where's it gone here? Yeah. The 18th in a tie, a par 5. A high tee box leads you into a tilting dogleg with bunkers on the left and trees to the right. It begs for a big drive. The fairway then flattens and races towards the clubhouse. A strong birdie opportunity. They've gone through every. I'm just
right. The best holes in the country.
Some of my happiest memories. Yep. Spent crushing drives down that 18th. Duffy could make return. United overpaid by 209 million pounds to further drive transfer inflation. This is a great story.
Harry Maguire, Aaron Wan-Bissaka,
Aaron Wan-Bissaka cost 50 million. I'd totally forgotten about that.
He's completely out of favour with Ten Hag. He's gone.
How much could you get for him? You just have to let that contract wind down.
Yeah, probably. I mean,
I would say Aaron Wan-Bissaka has earned more than Jimmy Garoppolo, or will earn more than Jimmy Garoppolo this year. Well, I don't think he was on 24 million a year. I'm not saying he was on 24 million a year, but this year I wouldn't be terribly surprised to learn Aaron Wan-Bissaka is getting more money than Jimmy G.
I'll find out what he's on.
See, I don't think it's going to be public.
Maybe not. Yeah.
All right. Well, let's see what
his 5-year current contract with United was 23.4 million guaranteed, so an average annual salary of 4.68 million.
Okay, so he's not quite.
But sterling, of course.
It's not far off.
Yeah.
It is sterling, yeah.
Yeah. Well, it depends what's the exchange rate at the minute. Still a decent coin.
So this is the CIES Football Observatory. They've done an analysis all the way back to 2012. And they found that transfer inflation has largely been driven by Manchester United being completely shit at buying players.
Yeah. But then is it United's fault? Because as soon as United come in for a player, the price is going to go up. And
it's their fault you don't pay.
Well, yeah.
By some of the was it Caicedo they could have for $1.5 million? And they said no, we'd rather pay 60 million for him in 18 months.
Yeah. And probably the issue is, and listening to people talking about Arsenal over the last couple of days, like they went from a period of buying terrible players for large sums of money to suddenly players that are a little bit less and getting 3 players for the price of what they were getting for 1. So it's value for money. United just haven't nailed it down. Maybe Anthony, that type of signing is the way forward. Still just an abnormal amount of money, and yet if he turns into a absolute superstar,
that's high risk, right?
Because it's a lot of money.
Yeah. Whereas if you could get Anthony, so if you do what Chelsea have done. Even to a certain degree what Manchester City have done is buy a lot of young players, put them through, loan them out for a couple of seasons and then take them back. It's far less risky than signing one player for 80 million.
Glazers panic and they have to just buy a superstar at the end of a transfer window and they've no choice, especially when there's Glazer out banners at every match. So
Mannion return, no real risk. That's Michael Scully has been speaking with Robbie Brennan, his club boss, and says that there's no real risk to it. It's going to be good. The football championship already starting to look good. Who says we don't need a long off season? It's 6 minutes past 9. If you want to get in touch with us this morning, we'd love to hear from you. 0879 180 180 is the WhatsApp number. Here's what's going up on OTB Sports Radio for you today. OTB Gold is Keith Andrews meets Philly McMahon. Dadcast at 3. Career Perspective with Jason McAteer and Cor Staunton is OTB Gold. That is today's papers.
OTB AM on OTB Sports Radio, Ireland's first and only sports radio station.
Just put my football analyst hat on. They don't have as much ability to switch things around like Arsenal do with Niedema, Blacksenius. They can try different formations. Don't think United might have that. They don't have the personnel to do that.
Subscribe to the OTB Koyig Pod on the OTB Sports app now.
If your business relies on a van, that wouldn't sound good, but this does. Get up to 75% off van insurance. Now available in FBD branches nationwide. FBD Insurance. Support. It's what we do. 75% no claims discount based on 5 years claims free. Available on new van policies used for farm or business purposes. Terms and conditions apply. Underwritten by FBD Insurance plc. FBD Insurance Group Limited, trading as FBD Insurance, is regulated by the Central Bank of Ireland.
Celebrate European Week of Sport this September at the Be Active Festival. An action-packed day out for the whole family at Sport Ireland Campus, Blanchardstown. Come and try new sports, fitness challenges and skill tests at Ireland's biggest sporting festival. Meet sporting legends. Check out the Inflatable Zone, Village Food Market and much more. There's something for everyone at the Be Active Festival. Saturday, September 24th at Sport Ireland Campus, Blanchardstown. Book your tickets now at beactivefestival.ie.
OTB AM
with Gillette. Get into your flow with the new Gillette Labs Razor with exfoliating bar.
It's just gone 8 minutes past 9 and I'm delighted to say Conor O'Brien is with us now, a former Leinster player. Conor, how are you?
I'm all good, yeah.
How does it sound when we're saying you're a former Leinster player at this point?
Bit unusual, I suppose, but it's nice knowing that I suppose I did get to play for Leinster, but no, it's a bit strange, I suppose. Life after rugby has been nice to me so far, but...
Yeah, what are you doing?
I'm working with a company called Tech Enable, so I'm sort of business development with them, and loving life, not being on a strict rugby schedule. It's nice change of scenery.
Yeah, did you have time to prepare for the fact that the end was coming? Because your injuries have been bad for the last couple of seasons, really. It wasn't like an injury that you did that was, okay, tomorrow they're coming to you and saying, okay, that's it. It was a long, slow, steady process.
Yeah, well, it slowly took away any bit of enjoyment I was getting out of it when all these injuries started coming around. So I suppose I had plenty of time to prepare for it, unfortunately. The first injury came over 2 years ago, just before COVID in Ospreys, and then it was just one after the other from there. It was 2 right hamstrings off the bone, and then I came back and did my ACL, and then got back for pre-season last season and tore my left hamstring off the bone. So yeah, nice little concoction there. But the last, say, 4 or 5 months of last season, I was sort of knew that it was kind of not getting much better, and
the hamstring,
my left hamstring, yeah. So it was just any time I went under any sort of like 0 to 100 sort of like, you know, that sprint effort, accelerations, it was too sore, and I was re-injuring it, and it was grand like rehabbing it. I was able to like slowly progress up, but then when I went back to train, it just couldn't withstand it.
You were studying economics in UCD while you were still playing with Leinster, so you obviously had one eye on the post career, but that's something you were probably going to be doing anyway.
Yeah, like they're very good in like Leinster and Ireland in general for getting you ready for life after rugby. So I was able to. I first of all went to Trinity when I left in. It would have been 8 years ago now, and I was living in Clontarf. I was studying in Trinity, and I was in the sub academy in Donnybrook. So logistically, it was a bit of a nightmare. So when I got into the academy, I moved to UCD into economics, and then I actually moved in with Will Connors and Jimmy O'Brien in a house beside UCD as well. So I had everything right beside me.
Zero crack, I'd say.
It's terrible. But no, I've been living with the two lads there for the last 6 years. I only moved out a couple of weeks ago back to Mullingar. So it was sort of pardon?
Totes emotion moving out.
Totes emotion. But it was sort of one of those things where I thought long and hard about it, because I was sort of left that rugby bubble, but I was still sort of had one foot in it when I was living with the lads, and like I loved them, and I wish I could live with them, but it just made sense. I'm able to work from home, and
kind of tormenting a little bit too. The lads are going off to training, coming back from matches, and you're thinking,
no, but they're understanding guys, like, but it's just for my own headspace, I suppose. It was sort of like, look, that chapter in my life has ended. It's happily, I don't want it to turn in any way sour, and I'll call into them now on the way home and stuff like that. Like, so there's no real difference there. We're still best mates. So.
And I'm sure that's going to be your experience with the people who you soldier with all the way up to this point.
For sure.
That team bond is really strong. Can you take us back to the injuries at the start? Like, you did. So was the left hamstring was the one that did in the end, or
the left hamstring was the one that?
But you tore the right hamstring off the bone first.
Twice, yeah. So I did that. I went into tackle a lad against Ospreys, and I sort of dipped my head into it, and my rear end went up, and my leg kind of stayed planted on the ground, and then the force came back down through. I can't really explain it, but it was poor tackle technique, and we were playing in the Knoll in Ospreys, which is an awful pitch. Like Mullingar pitch is much better, and then so that was a grade 4B or whatever that was, so it's tear off the bone. And then I came back, was sort of doing my own stuff over Zoom with my physio Carl, and during lockdown, because it was obviously, this was the first stage of it. That was in February 2020, so that was just coming into the start of COVID.
How long is the recovery from that?
That was 5 months,
right,
ballpark. And I came back, and literally I think the first week of training I came back and just went to sidestep someone down in the RDS. We were prepping for pre-season, and just tore a slightly different muscle, but it was complete rupture again.
Right.
So it was obviously hanging on by a thread for whatever reason, and like even I have the video of it. It looks very innocuous, so there's it didn't really make much sense. Everyone was quite baffled about that. So then,
is that another 5 months?
That's another 5 months, yeah.
Okay, so that's 10 months essentially, with a week in between where you're like, I feel great.
Yeah, and these things were getting infected as well every time as well. Like, I'm a clean person. I'm not like, it's not like I'm not showering or whatever, but for whatever reason, like any surgery I've gotten, it's just gotten infected. And that I was on a drip for both times with that in hospital for about just less than a week, which was fairly nasty as well, because like obviously that takes a lot out of your body. And then obviously slows down the rehab process as well. So it was a bit of a nightmare.
At that point, are you thinking, I'm going to come back from this, I'm going to make it as a rugby player, this is all going to stand to me in the end, I'm going to be more grateful for everything?
Yeah, I was like, so like you obviously hit these peaks. So like a few years ago I burst onto the scene and I was playing well, and I thought this, it's only going to go from here, but it didn't. And you sort of, when you're in that mindset and experience that, you always are striving for more and striving to get that again. But then when obviously an injury like that comes around the first time, I'm able to handle it, and it's obviously depressing and stuff like that, but like you're able to, put it into context. It's a contact sport and high impact, so you're going to get injured. But then when the second one came around, you just hit a little bit lower, and then when I come back, then I'm more excited because of all the hurt before.
So 10 months on from the first one, maybe even a bit longer. Yeah, you're back out in the field, and then you do your ACL.
Yeah, so I was then again. I was come back and I was like, this is my time now. I've done my injuries. I'll get a fair shake here. And then I literally caught a ball. It was slightly behind me. I went to just check and step off my left foot and just felt a little I don't really know how to describe it, just a little pop, I suppose. And I trained on for about 5 minutes, and I was like, this doesn't feel right. And I was very quiet, and I was like, I didn't really want to believe what was happening, because I the pain wasn't too bad, but it was reasonable pain, but not as bad as say the hamstring pain. But I was able to walk, but I didn't have the power in it, so I strapped it up and took painkillers and went out the next day to train. And then about 20 minutes in, which is decent to get through on no ACL, I just went to kick a ball and just excruciating pain, and got it scanned, and it was my ACL.
I noticed in your statement as well when you retired, Conor, you name checked the physio Carl Denver and Professor John Ryan as well in Leinster. Very often underappreciated members of a backroom team as well, the medical staff. But I mean, how important, when you're going through all those injuries you mentioned, how important are those people inside a club environment, in terms of even mentally getting you back up off the ground, and especially when you're getting constant injuries like yourself?
Massive, yeah. Those guys keep the show on the road, and you can't appreciate them enough, because they're not there's 23 lads out on a game day, but it's much more than that. The whole operation is so much bigger. And Carl Denver and John Ryan, like you were saying, these guys care more about you than you nearly care about yourself. Carl would be up he wouldn't get a night's sleep if I didn't rehab, or I was feeling a bit of pain during rehab the day before, and yeah, it's unreal how much they care and want to see you get better, because that's their main aim of their job, I suppose. But really, and they're good people persons as well, I suppose you could say. You're feeling there January morning, and it's 7 o'clock in the morning, and they're trying to get you out running and stuff, and they're able to get you out there and put the arm around you when you need it, and kick you up the backside when you need it as well. So it's good relationship, and he's a good mate of mine now after all that. The time I've spent with him, he was with me for all my 4 injuries, so we've seen enough of each other, unfortunately, on the physio bed.
When the ACL pops, in between that period from it actually happening and you acknowledging that it happens the next day, what's gone through your head at that stage?
It's fairly dark, because it's just this is why me, and all these things are why does someone not get injured at all, and I'm here 3 times on surgery bed in a year kind of thing, or a year, just over a year. But I suppose then I have a really, really good support network around me. I have my best mates, I have a really good girlfriend, and my family as well. So I couldn't ask for better people around me. So when I was feeling low and stuff, people were very, very supportive. So I mean, I could have been way worse off, and I look back and I think I see these head injuries and concussions and problems like that, and I think I'm one of the lucky ones that it was only a couple of leg injuries. I'm able to walk, and I can go for very slow jogs and stuff like that. So I'm happy.
You seem to have a very refreshing attitude about it, because you see a lot of people retiring in their mid-20s, and Ash Barty was actually similar attitude to yourself, from tennis. She was a similar age as well in her mid-20s when she hung up the racket. But it seems that attitude is so important, because I know a lot of people say, and studies have probably said, that when you're forced into retirement versus making your own mind up, it can have an impact on your mental health, of course. But it's probably all about attitude. You seem to have that aspect of it fairly sewn up.
Yeah, well, I didn't always, I suppose. There was times there where I was had that kind of negative mindset about like I was saying, why me and things like that. But I would be a big advocate on mentality and mental health and things like that. So it was sort of pick yourself up by your bootstraps, get on with it, and don't be you need that growth mindset. People always talk about it, but it's look, these are setbacks, but there's a silver lining to all this. I'm primed to sort of take whatever next step and excel at that, because of all the things I've learned in the setbacks and my attitude and work ethic and things like that. So there's more positives than negatives to take from it. But the last I suppose 2 years or a bit less, maybe, like there was obviously so many ups and downs, but like it wasn't enjoyable. You know, rugby wasn't enjoyable for me because I wasn't able to play. Yeah. So like I enjoyed rugby when I'm like going well and I'm, you know, on top of my game, in good shape, and that just wasn't there. So like I struggled, especially for the last kind of season when I knew I wasn't getting this hamstring any better, and I was going in rehabbing, and I was like, this is just not getting better, and it was quite dreary, I suppose you could say. But
and
look,
is there anything that can fix a hamstring? Like, you know, in 3 years' time, could your hamstrings be fine?
I'm not sure, to be honest with you. Like by right, the hamstring should be fine, but for whatever reason, the way the scar tissue healed, it just I'm getting sort of constant pain with it. But as I said, I'm able to slowly jog on it, which is fine by me. I'm hitting the roads around Mullingar. So, yeah.
And did you are you looking at the internet for all the weirdest complementary therapies it's possible to get? Like, did you go down a wormhole like that?
Well, like you do kind of, but like I'd sort of be holistic approach myself. So like I think, you know, get your mind and body right and your diet and things like that, and I was nailing all that. And outside of that, like anyone I ask has their own home remedy that their granny had for them when they were younger, but nothing seems to be doing the trick just yet.
There's the horse bone man down in Kildare. Did you like those kind of
that type of thing? Yeah, but nothing that has in any way interested me too much. Aside from getting another surgery on it, but like obviously the trauma your body goes through, like not like mentally or whatever, but like just going through surgeries like that, I think, you know, you lose a lot of muscle mass and things like this. Just your body reaction to that sort of procedure is quite I wouldn't say it's too healthy getting it done the whole time.
No, definitely not.
It's slow to go back on the table.
When the hamstring isn't properly responding, in the back of your head there's a voice saying, right, this is it, you need to start planning. Is that a straightforward conversation? Do you just accept that immediately, or are you like,
no, it wasn't straightforward. No, it was completely. I was like, will I keep pushing it? Will I not? Is this for me? Is it not? You know, it's just like this constant conversation you're having in your head. And I was talking to so many different people that I trusted, and I know I wanted their counsel from, you know, the situation. What do you think I should do? And then ultimately the question is like, what's good for me and what do I want to do? So when I answered that question, it was like it was relatively easier because I was saying I wasn't enjoying myself playing rugby or you know, rehabbing in Leinster, so that made it slightly easier because I was able to sort of step away from it with a little bit more ease, I suppose you could say, than if I was like, this came at a time when I was, you know, playing for Ireland or something like that it would have been much harder because I was like very much in the mix, but I hadn't experienced that in so long, over 2 years, that it was slightly easier. But again, I was forced into the decision as well. So, and the fact of the previous number of injuries as well, it's sort of, I don't believe in, you know, wishy-washy things, but like the universe sometimes might tell you something, and in this case I think it
after
gave
2
me enough
years you had
signs.
enough. Yeah. Can we go back to like when you're breaking through, because your story, it's not unique anymore, but it's still not the norm, where you've got a GAA background and have come through not the traditional Leinster school system. What was your route to getting into the Leinster Academy?
So as you were saying, I played at Mullingar rather than, you know, most of the lads in there would have played schools rugby. So my school didn't really play rugby, so it was like Gaelic football, hurling, and then rugby outside after school on a Tuesday and a Thursday, and play on the weekend. So
you played underage GAA for Westmeath. Was it hurling and football, or? Yeah,
I played both, but I played minor football. I sort of kept football going a little bit longer. Right. So played a couple of years of minor football, and then I sort of like, when they got to, remember I was saying the sub academy at around 19, I sort of was like,
how do you even get into the sub academy though? How do they find you?
You play, so the club scene starts at about under 16s. There's the Shane Horgan Cup, which is regions of around Leinster, and so I was in the Midlands region, which was made up of Mullingar, Longford, Birr, Tullamore.
Okay.
You know, Roscrea, I think, I'm not 100% sure. And they so we play against other, like Northeast, Metro, Southeast, and they're all in a competition, play each other once, and then the top wins it, and then from that you get picked for Leinster clubs. So then Leinster clubs was Irish clubs, so I had 2 years of that.
Right.
And then Leinster and Ireland under 19s, 20s, you know.
And is somebody at that stage saying to you, here, listen, you've got the profile, you might be able to make it as a rugby player?
Yeah. Well, I was always very self-critical of myself and quite, you know, hard on myself in terms of performance, and I'd always be, you know, beating myself up if I made a mistake, couple of mistakes, things like that. So like I got a lot of, you know, you're good enough, and, you know, just trust your ability and things like that, and don't be, you know, get the right mindset sort of thing. So I did hear a lot of that, and then it sort of slows down as you're getting on and on, because like obviously you're getting older and older, and it's like, well, maybe you don't have this massive future ahead of you, you know, sort of thing. So it's nice to hear when you're younger and stuff, and I needed a lot of those pick me up sort of things. So.
And when they ring you and say, look, we've got a Leinster Sub Academy position for you, what's that like?
Just the conversation is sort of like, it was Wayne Mitchell at the time was the academy coach in Leinster, and he was like, we'd like to give you a sub academy, and I was like, brilliant, but it was not brilliant when you're doing it, because it's 7 o'clock gym sessions every week, every day of the week, followed by a pitch session before college, so it's like
hard work.
Well, I did 2 years of that, so most people just do a year. So I didn't do TY, so I was like slightly younger than some of the other guys going into college.
Did you not do TY because you wanted to be a professional rugby player? Was that
no? Just the school didn't have TY.
Okay, right. Fair enough.
So
yeah.
I got into the sub academy, and then did 2 years
in college
of that.
at that stage. So
yes,
right.
That was when I was in Trinity, and then I was living in Clontarf, so it was sort of the dart line there.
Yeah.
From Harmonstown down was being used a lot by me.
And so, sorry about this, but so you're getting up every day at 7 o'clock to go to training out in
Donnybrook. So
Donnybrook.
I get the dart from Harmonstown to Sandymount, and then walk from Sandymount to Donnybrook, which is a decent. Now in the middle of winter, it is fairly tough. Like.
Yeah, to go and like lift weights and be shouted at. And
yeah,
then,
and I wouldn't really be a massive lover of the gym either. So I've sort of taken my sabbatical from weightlifting since I've stopped. I'm doing the odd circuit and stuff, but I'm not even going for PRs on the bench.
And then you go into college to do it.
Then I go into college.
Right. Okay.
Most of the time. I didn't go in all the time.
Okay, I was going to say, you'd be a bit wrecked. You know?
Yeah. I mostly go back and sleep on the couch. But
and then a second year of that, you're like...
Yeah, second year, that was tough now, yeah.
You really have to want it to keep going.
Yeah.
And are they saying, we're going to keep you for second year because we think you're going to make the academy, you just need to...
Yeah, it's sort of like you're in a bit of limbo. Like I would have been probably not good enough to get into the academy straight away. I would have been not very out of my depth, but I would have been out of my depth. And it worked because I did another year in sub academy, and I was coming into that under 20 season with Leinster in like I played pre-season with Mullingar Shamrocks, and I was flying fit, and
right.
I came back in and had quite a good pre-season with the Leinster 20s. We didn't play as well in the Interpros, but we didn't even win it, but that sort of led into the Irish 20s then.
Okay, so you got selected for the Ireland
yes,
under 20s, and that's World Cup year, is that right?
That's the World Cup year, yeah, with Manchester that year. So
right.
It was it would have been 2016 in Manchester. So.
And you're getting game time for Ireland?
Yeah. So we had the Six Nations, and I didn't get started the first few games. It was Shane Daly and Jimmy O'Brien in the centre, so I came off the bench against Wales and whoever else we played. I think I started the rest of the games then in the Six Nations and the World Cup. So
right.
It was a bit of a slow start, but we obviously had that away win in England against England in the Six Nations, which was a massive win. My whole family was there, and very emotional, like beating England, because we were obviously underdogs as well.
Yeah. And then that team goes on and beats the All Blacks.
Yeah, so then obviously in May or whenever it was, went over to Manchester for the World Cup and got to the final. So yeah, beat the All Blacks, obviously very historic day, and you just don't even like thinking back, like it's such you think this is going to be it now for the rest of my life sort of thing. Like so,
I'm sure
I rarely hit that sort of high again.
But you do start to believe that you're in the right position. That whatever, whatever about not coming through the same route as everybody else, you've justified your path to get there.
Yeah, I mean, it's it was sort of like, because you're playing in front of pretty much sold out. Now the stadiums were small. It was in the Manchester City Academy Stadium and then the AJ Bell as well. So like they weren't massive stadiums, but like that was your first sort of glimpse of the limelight, you could say, because we got a lot of media traction over here.
Oh, totally, yeah.
So
who else is on the team?
Max Deegan, James Ryan. There's loads of Andrew Porter. They're all like kind of the Leinster lads. Jimmy O'Brien.
Yeah.
Will Connors was injured for the World Cup, but who else? Hugo Keenan.
Not a bad team.
It was
Decent,
it was a good team.
Yeah.
We were quite we went under the radar a little bit, like the year before and a couple of years before. Like teams were sort of had really big names. Now there was big names in our team, but for whatever reason they just kind of wrote us off a little bit after the Six Nations. So we were losing at half time to Wales by it must have been around 20 points. I'm not 100% sure of the stats, and then we came back and beat Wales, and Wales had won either the Grand Slam or just the Six Nations. I'm not 100% sure if they went unbeaten, and we came and beat them, and that was like a shock. These lads were walking around like the best, and we beat them, and that completely like turned it around, because at halftime we were like, we're going to lose to Wales, we're probably going to lose to the All Blacks, and whatever happens against Georgia happens. But we beat them, and then they went on. We went and topped the group. We went unbeaten until the final, beat Argentina in the semis. So it was that all changed from that half time in the first game.
And did that change your life then as well, in terms of like what the expectation was from you when you came back as somebody who could have an impact at that level in that team?
I suppose it did, like, because I was playing adult rugby at the time with Clontarf, so that definitely primed me a bit more, because I'm playing against these lads and I'm like, these lads are like 10 kilos lighter than the lads I'm playing against.
Right.
With Clontarf, like I was playing against good like Lansdowne players, Ternier, Marys, the works, like, so it was like I was playing against lads and I was like, this is not as hard as what I've been playing over in Ireland. So now this was at the World Cup, and just things started clicking for everyone, it seemed like, and it just was unreal.
And so when you come back from that, how close are you to getting into, are you still in academy at that stage? Have you got a full-time professional contract with Leinster?
No, I would have known like a few months before the World Cup that I was in the Leinster Academy. So I was sat down by, I think it was Gareth Dempsey at the time, and being like, we'd love to offer you an academy place.
Right.
So that's 3 years. And so then we went to the World Cup and then got 2 weeks off and came back, and that was the start of my Leinster career in the Leinster building in UCD.
Right, because that's what happens. You get into the full team first. And how close are the academy players? Do they often get called up for league matches?
Well, like, it wasn't the norm, but it is kind of now that, I wouldn't say lads would be going in with a goal in first year academy to be playing a league game, but like, it definitely happens. So it's not like completely unheard of, but like
how long did it take you to play league?
I think I was in my second year. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, could have been. Yeah, I think it was second year. Could have been the end of my first year, but I'm not 100%.
Okay, so very much on target and like a little bit ahead of schedule. So and you're playing centre.
Centre, yeah, 12 and 13, but just 12 Leinster. For whatever reason, I sort of bulked up a little bit in that after the World Cup, so I was just kind of more of a 12 than a 13.
Okay,
I was playing out half for a good bit of my under 18 career with Leinster and Ireland, and then they just kind of saw me as a centre from there. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah.
Did you have a conversation about that, or was that just?
No, I never did actually. Probably should have.
Right, respect.
They always saw me as this big, ball carrying centre, but like, I would have seen it as slightly different in my own head, But it's that sort of like.
Well, that's good to know. Yeah. And at that stage, you feel like, I'm going to play for the Ireland senior team. I've been part of this.
That'd be a goal. Like, you wouldn't be going around saying it around.
No,
the
of course,
building,
but it's realistic.
Well, like, you see the path that the people ahead of you have taken, and it's like, I can do it. Like, I probably didn't believe how close ability-wise we were back then to the senior guys. Now looking back on it, I'm like, I look at the academy lads and I'm like, these guys are like maybe a couple of % off in terms of like maybe their mindset and their physique, but other than that, it's like the skills are pretty much all there, and there's not a million miles. And I think if just they could, like, and myself included back then, if I could have just believed that you are good enough and like you're not far off at all when you first step into the academy, unless of course there's certain players that are way off, but not way off, but
well, they wouldn't have taken you
exactly. So like, you're usually getting the cream of the crop going into the academy and stuff, and then there's guys then as well, like Rowan Osborne, say he actually retired this year with concussion, so but he like didn't get into the academy and then did his full college experience, played with Trinity at the time, and then he got into Leinster offered him a contract at the end of that because of how well he was playing. So like, there is different avenues as well. You don't have to do 3 years in the academy and 2 years development and things like that anymore. It's sort of, if you're good enough, they'll find you.
I'm just looking at your Conor. You 2013, you were on the Westmeath minor team that played Mayo
Yes,
Like
in O'Connor Park, yeah.
If you look at the Mayo team from that day, like Conor Loftus, Tommy Conroy, Stephen Cohen, Cian Hanley was on it as well, Matthew Ruan was on the bench. Like
Dermot O'Connor, I was marking Dermot O'Connor. Yeah.
You were marking him?
I was marking him, yeah, he was tough. It was tough.
Is that a sliding doors moment for you, like trying to choose between, when you're playing sport, a multitude of sports at a high level, was it a sliding doors moment choosing which sport
to
it
was a bit. The crux of it was the professional element of rugby. Like the money's good at the top and it's good to aim for, whereas in GA it's slightly different. Like you might get a good job at, like, you know, about who you know, you might get a good job in Dublin, or, you know, sort it out with expenses, things like that. But I'm a GA man through and through. Like that's my number one, like it always has been. So it was a tough decision, because if football was football, especially if football was professional, like I would have picked football probably. Like,
you'll be spending more time in Cusack Park than the RDS now then?
Probably, yeah. But at the same time, like I wouldn't watch too much rugby outside of playing it. So like since I've stopped playing, like I'd watch the odd game, and then like any game the lads are playing in with Leinster and stuff, I'd watch that. But
do you think that'll change in time, that you might be able to watch it a bit easier? Or is that?
It's not really that, like, I don't. I'm salty about it anyway. It's just sort of like I never really watched too much of it outside of playing it. That's sort of it. Like I like watching soccer. I like watching football, hurling, a bit of F1 after watching Drive to Survive. I think the whole country does that. The whole world does that. But other than that, like I wouldn't stick on rugby to chill.
How close to the Leinster first team do you feel you got, like, for the big games?
Pretty far away, further away than I would have liked to have been. Like the sort of the playing squad, or the main squad, is I like to call it, the sort of 25 or 30 lads that are like in thereabouts. I was sort of never in that circle, so sort of like, now when I say a circle, I mean like I was still like in the circle, but not. I was looking in from the outside in terms of playing.
Yeah.
So I never quite reached that stage, because when I was playing that time, like the run of games a few years ago, I was still in the academy and stuff. So like it's like it is sort of one big happy family in there, but at the same time, like if you're in the academy, like you're in like the further dressing room and stuff like that. But like it is integrated well, like way better than most other professional environments I've heard of anyway. So it's just obviously going to be a slight different. You're younger, they don't know you as well and things like that.
Yeah, so it takes a bit of time to get the trust and to get those. And how realistic would it have been, do you think, to play Champions Cup? Were you maybe 18 months away from that?
Yeah, like if I kept going the way I was going, and then maybe the season after, maybe like that could have been a possibility. Like I think
the competition must be incredibly cutthroat.
Yeah, it's tough. Like
you had 60 Robbie, players last year.
Yeah, like the centres were all internationals, like Robbie and Gary and Joe Tamani was there at the time. I know they've Charlie Natai now. And then like lads coming up, you've like, you know, Liam Turner, David Hawkshaw's centre. He's at Connacht now, obviously. So there's a plethora of every position, and they're all nearly internationals, like 4 deep. So it's a cutthroat, as you're saying.
Well, listen, we wish you the very best of luck.
Appreciate it.
You seem to reacclimatise to civilian life quite well.
Yeah, enjoying it. I'm enjoying all the freedom. I'm like
more ice baths.
Are you with Niall Horan and Lewis Capaldi at the Fla?
I didn't meet them now, but I saw plenty of pictures. I think everyone has a picture on their wall there. So, no, it's good. I'm enjoying life. So.
Well, we wish you the very best. Thanks so much for joining us in the studio today. It's Conor O'Brien. OTB AM is brought to you live each morning by Gillette Labs for an effortless finish to your day. Joe is back tonight from 7. They'll also have the latest episode of A Slight Tangent. Dan McDonald will be on hand to look ahead to Ireland's game with Scotland this weekend, and there's plenty more besides. We're back tomorrow with Vinny Perth's tactical insight ahead of Ireland's game with Scotland, Lee Keegan on the new Mayo setup, and plenty more besides. Right now we'll leave with Graham Hunter on last night's show. Enjoy.
The Madrid derby last night, Real Madrid were 2-1 winners away to Atletico. It was a free-to-air game actually on ITV, so I suspect lots of you were watching. It maintains Real Madrid's 100% start to the season. However, it's been overshadowed somewhat, I think it's fair to say, by the racism which was very much in show around the game. And it's the culmination of a week in Spanish football where this issue has been to the fore. You may have seen, for instance, a statement on Vinicius Jr. in advance of the game, which went viral. To explain all, Graham Hunter, I'm very happy to say, is with us. Evening, Graham.
Hi, Joe.
So you can explain all this, because the first, for instance, I saw this was when Vinicius's statement popped up on Twitter, and I had no idea the context or what was going on. If I get the ball rolling and you fill in some of the details, I know last Sunday, September 11th now, Vinicius Jr., there was a confrontation with some Mallorca players in the game. They considered him maybe to be showboating a touch. When he scored, he danced. I think the Mallorca manager spoke to him during the game, and then, as is often the way, everybody downplayed it afterwards in their post-match interviews, but not sufficiently so as to avoid being the fodder of talk shows during the week. And that is where El Chingarito, the TV program, which is kind of viral this part of the world, and the presenter, or one of them, Joseph Pedrerol, does these very dramatic monologues and music in the background. So there was a discussion there where a football agent, one of the guests, Pedro Bravo, he was, they're discussing the wrongs and rights of showboating or players dancing after celebrations. And Pedro Bravo said, Vinicius will have to respect the opponents. If you want to dance, go to the Sambadrome in Brazil. In Spain, you have to respect rivals and stop playing the monkey. And needless to say, that choice of word prompted huge backlash, went viral. Pedro Bravo, I think, talked about this is a figurative, if admittedly poorly chosen turn of phrase, but a turn of phrase nonetheless. And I'm sorry if you were offended, I think seemed to be the tone of his response. So that's kind of big picture stuff. You can fill in whatever details you think are of note here, and go back to the Mallorca match if you want.
Well, Joe, thanks. And I'm glad that, as usual, Off the Ball has taken the time to try and focus on this, explain this. I can't deny, Joe, and you can give me a slap around the chops because we've known each other long enough if you think I'm going down a wrong path here, but I can't help feeling a sense of vicariousness, salaciousness, because in my 20 years in Spain, I've often been asked to talk about the situation where racism of one form or another crops up in Spanish football, and I don't have any different suggested solutions today than I did 20 years ago or 15 years ago or 5 years ago. And I hate with all my soul the idea that we'll talk about this in an articulate, honest way, interchange opinions, and then it'll all get packaged up neatly and the listeners will say, oh, right, Joe had it right there, Graham had it right-ish there, whatever, and then we'll all move on, because it feels beyond impotent. If you'll allow me, because you know by now how, whether people like or disagree with my opinions or don't, how passionate I feel about things. And, the Mallorca game, and this is, Joe, I emphasise simply my opinion. In the Mallorca game, Pablo Maffeo, who is the fullback of the Mallorcan team, went after Vinicius to try and do him damage. It's the second time in 2 games he's done that. His acts were deliberately to try and get the rise out of Vinicius, to injure him, to try and get him to respond, to sent off. I dedicated my ESPN column to the whole thing that Monday for Tuesday, about how, albeit that Vinicius is flawed at 22 in terms of occasionally being quite gauche about how he'll try to get opponents into trouble and corner referee because he's seeing others do it, get away with it, and he's not doing it quite so well. That's about, the 4% tip of the iceberg, in that he's turned into one of the top 5 or 6 footballers in the world. He's 22. There's an awful lot more to come. He's hitting numbers in the Champions League, goals and assists, which outstrip Messi and Cristiano Ronaldo at the same age. And it's now that the increasing tide of opponents coming after him will define whether he wants to do what he's been doing up to now, which is the Leo Messi approach of don't make me angry, otherwise I'll hurt you on the pitch. I'll play better, I'll score, you'll lose, you'll be humiliated, suck that up, pal. Or he starts to retaliate, and I list some of the great retaliations in Spanish football, which include Diego Maradona kung fu kicking Juanito, stamping on Lothar Matthäus's back and face, Pepe, Jalminha headbutting his own coach in training at Deportivo La Coruña. There have been a few. And it was my opinion, strong opinion, that there was a a racist edge to what Mallorca were doing. And Vinicius, post the Mallorca game, the only time where he went and reacted, and I spoke to ex-professionals, fellow journalists on the Monday following that Mallorca game. I hated them. I bet he's disrespectful. I mean, listen, Joe, you'll have to find the machine that bleeps people. Bollocks, utter bollocks. This is a brilliant footballer who celebrates the joy of how he plays. He's extravagant. He's flamboyant. He's genuinely extraordinary, and he's what people pay a ticket to see football for. It's the reason that football rights sell for millions and billions. And if you don't like him, that's okay, but you can't allow that then to defend the thugs and say, well, it's his own fault. He brings it upon him. We've heard that argument in other sections of society where men have been talking about women and been wrong for decades and decades. And it was my opinion there was an edge to it. And Vinicius, now this is a he said, she said, Vinicius says that in Pablo Maffeo's last intent to clock him, he heard the Mallorca coach, Javier Aguirre, shouting, kick him. And he turned and went and remonstrated with about 15 feet between the two of them, pointing at the opposition coach. Toni Kroos and Ancelotti intervened, and that started this week-long flow of tiresome nonsense about should he, shouldn't he. It provides the shambling, idiotic, drivelling, half-wit people that sadly run or are involved in too many of the world's media in saying, great, here's fuel for a week. Is he, isn't he, shouldn't he, shouldn't he, all that rubbish. Now, Chiringuito, which you mentioned, is a floating, stinking turd of a television program. It damages television. It damages people's views about footballers, whether they're simply commodities or they're human beings or not. It damages the football industry. It's disgusting, It's malfeasance in a camera, and they invite this idiot on, and you quoted him in English precisely accurately. And nobody, as much as Spain, as a society in Spanish football, lagged far behind what we in Britain and Ireland understand, whether there is as much racism in Britain and Ireland or as in Spain or not, I can't measure out because I don't know. But I do know that the debate, that the language, that the norms, the intention to eradicate it, to punish, to educate, has polemicized at least the United Kingdom. It's longer since I spent concerted time in Ireland. But while there are people who refuse to learn, who refuse to join in, the debate is far advanced from Spain. But nonetheless, anybody in professional society in Spain knows that any use of any phraseology about a black sports person, about a black person that involves the word monkey is a racial slur. People know that. Pedro Bravo subsequently has lied, in my opinion. Pedrerol, a serial, disgusting, slimy liar, in my opinion, has lied. And well, Vinicius, of course, it's a phrase and just disgusting. And the fact that this untapped sewage is allowed on the air is one of the first things I would end if and when I'm properly given societal power.
Could I jump in there? So my understanding of Spanish is zero, and my understanding of idiomatic Spanish is worse. Again, that phrase, hacer el mono, he used, which is, playing the monkey. He has said, look, it was inappropriate in the context of talking about a black player, but it was meant in its natural form. Is that a very common phrase? Is that one you might use yourself? Is that like, or did that feel
come on, pointed? I know you've got to put balance, but of course, I grew up, at my age, I grew up where, and I would still talk about monkeying around amongst friends about somebody. We use the phrase monkey business. It's not in itself a applied to human
So
behaviour.
what I'm asking,
pejorative.
Yes, exactly.
However,
so what I'm asking is was this a very careless slip of the tongue, or has this been understood as being very pointed and deliberate?
I already said to you, and I meant when I said it, that any educated man or woman in Spanish professional society, whether it be that idiot Pedro Bravo, who's earning his money out of the football industry, or somebody who's working as a dentist, a lawyer, I don't care.
Yeah.
When they use any phrase that is reapplicable in another situation and is non-pejorative, when they use that phrase, any phrase regarding the word monkey, in relation to a debate about a black man or woman, they know what they're doing. Simple as, Joe. Yes, and it clouds the debate. There's a follower of La Liga that whose personality and views and backstory, who lives in Dublin, who I cherish very much, and he tweeted to me about, geez, I've been using that phrase about, stop monkeying around, stop playing the monkey for years. Yeah, but your kids aren't black. It isn't meant in a pejorative way. You aren't arguing about a high-profile black man or woman in society. Therefore, it's completely different. And it genuinely, I appreciate as a broadcaster you had to clarify, you had to offer that
it's
up.
because I don't know it's because I don't know, Graham, who this man is. I didn't watch it. I don't understand daily Spanish. So I think it's important to clarify these things. That's why.
Let me offer it back to you. Let me offer it back to you then. In that case, in the exact same circumstances, if somebody in Irish society was using a phrase which was non-pejorative in other instances about a black man or woman who was in the focus of conversation, would that choice of phrase by a white Irish man or woman in a public forum be injudicious, and would it be judged to have carried racist overtones or not?
About a white person or a black person?
How about a black person?
Oh, of course. I think everybody instantly would say, well, that's inappropriate.
Identical here.
Yes, but I think we're all human beings, and if somebody said, oh my God, sorry, I've been saying that all my life, I totally see why that's inappropriate now, and retreated from it immediately. There can be that moment.
This was 1967, I agree with you.
Okay,
but it's not. And in this society, albeit that the lack of education is patent, that the lack of so many years of people of different coloured skins, different religions in Spain, there was a dictator, one of Francisco Franco's ideas were everybody outside white Catholic Spain is literally to be feared and pushed away. It's like letting a germ into a spacesuit. That genuinely was what he taught and inculcated. There was a 1984 George Orwell idea about so many years of power from 39 till he died in 75, eradicating that, even beginning to address that in Spanish society is a big project, and it took too long for many people to get after it. But let me assure you and your listeners again, anybody in a position equivalent to Pedro Bravo, who's head of the Professional Football Agent Society, in this year of 2022, using any phrase that he might use happily to his kids or to a 15-year-old neighbour, stop monkeying around up my tree, to use that in the context of a critical debate about Vinicius' behaviour held in Kent, in Scots law mens rea, unquestionably in my view. And therefore, that is a small microcosm of the way in which many Spanish people of his age and older still feel it's not wrong, it's not disastrous.
Yes.
It's not even insulting. Listen, Joe, the worst racism I've ever seen in Spain, not that's ever taken place, was in Spanish football. It was in 2014. It was Real Madrid against Atletico Madrid in the Cup at the Bernabeu. The two managers, coincidentally enough, 8 years ago were Ancelotti and Simeone. Madrid won 3-0. Their unused players were sent out to do the warm-down exercises, where up in the right-hand stand from the main tribune, the 500-600 Atleti fans were still locked in, not being let out into all away fans know the feeling until things had died down outside. Then you get marched home by a police escort. The abuse, the racist abuse, which Marcelo, and he had his 4-year-old son Enzo, who's now a youth player at Real Madrid, suffered, was so criminal, so evil, so bad that on the spot I phoned Sky Sports News. They stopped everything, dedicated their bulletin to it. There's a big furore in Spain. Atleti played it down. It didn't happen. This is exaggerated until Marcelo tweeted later that night, it did happen. I heard all of it. It was hideous, but neither I nor my son would be. So Ancelotti on Friday saying, well, listen, asked about Vinicius. Ancelotti saying there isn't that kind of racism in Spain before this game. Doesn't help. Right. But it's another way to understand the lack of education, the complacency. Ancelotti was the manager that night. It was Marcelo, his own player, who was then being targeted. And yet it does, that sort of thing doesn't really, what? So I was in the studio last night, not outside the Metropolitano. The videos now in this day and age with cameras that we all get on our telephones shows unequivocally many Atletico fans shouting the phrase Vinicius is a monkey.
Yes, right. So we'll come to that. I mean, that was just insane. Like the atmosphere in that game last night was insane.
But we know where it comes from.
Vinicius releases a statement, and further to your point, and it's a long statement, but it's very striking that he, towards the end of his statement, does say, "The plot always ends with an apology and quote, they misinterpreted me. But I repeat to you, racist, I will not stop dancing." So, look, he is wise to everything you've just talked about there, and he's seen this routine before. So yeah, the game, and I don't know what you were anticipating, but you've alluded to it there. The scenes around the stadium were nothing short of disgraceful again. What have we seen in those videos?
Look, it makes you want to vomit. It makes me right now feel physically ill that we live in a barbarian, dark. And let's flipping heck, if we can elect racists and thieves to the government in England and the government in Washington, then are we really surprised that these people will stand outside the area where the Madrid bus arrives and shout Vinicius is a monkey? It is still not uncommon, although in my experience over 20 years, it is decreasing to hear monkey noises in a stadium if an opposition black player has in some way annoyed the fans by claiming it's a throw-in for his side when it's maybe not. It's just that last night was that I've seen as targeted and vicious because of the way that we hear things in the studio. To hear the crowd noise specifically and tell you I was a witness to it would be false, but I've heard from people within the stadium that there were still too much racist responding to Vinicius. I've seen it. I've just told you about one example. I've seen it worse, watching the pictures of how fans around Vinicius reacted. But for my taste, and it's what I tried to communicate about Vinicius, he is gauche. He occasionally does the wrong thing. He's a 22-year-old with people now having told him what a dolt he was when he couldn't finish or his passing was a little bit inaccurate. Now, people like me, but many people telling him, you're on your way to an eventual golden ball. He and Benzema shared an assist goal partnership of 111 last season alone. 111 split between them. He's adored by Modric and by Kroos and Benzema and by Militao and Rodrigo, etc. He feels on top of the world, and occasionally at 22, flipping heck, Joe, I can't speak for you, but sure. I'm still struggling with correct behaviour. So he attracts ire because he's lightning, he's dangerous, and there are still some people inside stadia who will target him or other black players. I think it's on the decrease a little bit, and I can only give you a millimetre of feedback, a microcosm, in that both my daughters went to school in Spain. My younger daughter has only just left to go to university. During her time at school, compared to my elder daughter's time at school in Spain, the awareness, the curriculum, the messages, the existing awareness in her age group has changed out of all recognition in a period of 9 years between the two kids. That isn't a countrywide examination. Historically, socially, and you're a brighter, better educated man than me, but historically, socially, when times economically are tough, when society is fractured, sadly, the dominant majority in many Western countries are white, and those who don't have look for anybody who's of a different idea, different philosophy, religion, or colour to them to target. So in my opinion, some of the progress that's made in Spain in recent years might be washed away by the time we live in, because of living in fractious, dangerous, reductive times. but I think there's been some change, certainly in terms of awareness. The fact that worm-tongued Pedrerol actually made what I consider to be a false and misleading apology is something that would never have happened 6, 9, 10, 15, 20 years ago. That there is the tiniest whiff of change, but there's the even greater whiff of BS around this.
Well, look, that's why it's great to have you on, because we're reading this from afar and not maybe able to understand the sincerity or lack of it with some of these proponents that you're talking about. So these awful scenes happen at the game last night. How is that covered? How is that talked about over the subsequent 24 hours in the media? As Vinicius commented on the treatment he was subjected to?
It's given equal space to Pedrerol's statement, which is patently wrong. Now, the fact that I read into Pedrerol's repeatedly, if you are this, and then I apologize. If you are this, and I apologize about Pedrerol. That's fear, because Real Madrid released a statement